Today marks 26 years of Nigeria's democracy, our transition to democratic rule from President Olusegun Obasanjo in 1999 up onto President Bola Ahmed Tinubu here in 2025. So we're looking at the journey so far. What has the dividend of democracy offered Nigerians in the area of politics, leadership, healthcare, governance, and all the various sectors that we can cover today? That is our focus for the show this morning. Again, we say good morning and welcome to Breakfast Central. My name is Olive Emodi.
My name is Joe Hansen. We're saying welcome once again. And yes, it's going to be more than just 3 hours here on News Central. We're going to have every single hour taking a look at Nigeria's democratic journey. Most importantly, as Olive has rightly mentioned, from 1999. It starts here with us on Breakfast Central for 3 hours as we count down and take a look at some of the economic reforms, not forgetting too. The president was supposed to address the nation today at 7 a.m.
Which is typically the custom.
Yeah, I mean, which is the usual custom every single Nigerian is used to. I remember back then in the day, you have to tune your parents, your uncle, whoever was around would say, oh, put on the TV, I need to hear the presidential address. And when there was no light, in quotes, power, electricity, there was the transistor radio where they tune on and then they get to listen and say, everybody keep quiet. I need to listen to the presidential speech.
Stands, everybody's gathered to discuss because the newspapers will then carry the president's speech.
That's it.
So it's a different turn. He's trying to do things differently.
It is. And the president has said that he's going to address the nation when he meets with the Joint Assembly, which is the National Assembly and, of course, the House of Representatives. They will be sitting with the president today. The only thing that we look forward to hold on to would be the exact time when this will be done. But in the meantime, for us here on Breakfast Central, it's a fully packed show, we must tell you, because we do have guests who will be joining us pretty soon. We'll be looking at different angles, and we've decided upon ourselves, having taken a look at the medical condition and the situation that took place this week, we decided to also focus our attention on Nigeria's medical system since democracy, not forgetting to the economy, the subnationals, leadership, and so much more. So I dare to say that it's going to be a very fantastic show. All you need to do is stay with us, and you will not regret every or any single part of it, Olive.
I think it's also important to say to our audience that if you would like to be a part of the show, we want you to be a part of the show. Please go on YouTube and drop your questions while our guests are in the studio. There are areas that you would like us to particularly speak about or ask questions about. We're streaming live on News Central TV's platform on YouTube. You can drop your questions there and we'll be very, very glad to take them. Remember, there's no area that is out of bounds. It's Nigeria's democracy. It is the supremacy of the law over the governed and the rulers and the rules. It's also the governance for the people, by the people, governance of the people, for the people, by the people. And so the question we're asking today is, democracy as is it the same as a democracy as it ought to be? And are there ways in which we can make amendments, looking at electoral reforms, looking at the constitutional reforms, as well as, whilst we're judging the past journeys, are there lessons that we could have taken from the past leaders in terms of their achievements, as well as their shortfalls? These are the areas that we hope to explore this morning on Breakfast Central. So we say thank you for joining us. Be a part of the conversation on all media platforms at News Central TV, but particularly drop your thoughts, questions, comments on our YouTube channel. Who knows, we might open the phone lines at some point, depending on how we go this morning.
That's right. Well, let's do one thing which we usually do best is to actually go for a break and then go straight into the conversation. Don't worry, there are no wake-up conversations this morning. No. If you were hoping to see wake-up conversations, a special broadcast, and our attention would be focused on especially Democracy Day. Yes,
I think if we're to have any wake-up conversation, it will be more of us talking about our thoughts about Nigeria's democracy. Typically, we often say how, as lawyers, then we say the law as is a far cry from the law as it ought to be. So it would be that some people are of the opinion that democracy as is a far cry from democracy as it ought to be, especially when you look at certain tranches of democracy that are very key pillars. The rule of law, the respect of the rule of law, which is the supremacy of the law over the rulers and the ruled. And when we judge past administrations as well as the present administration as to how well they have focused on impacting or enforcing the rule of law, particularly the current administration, would you say that this has been one that has been obedience to the rule of law, or has it been one that has been silencing of dissenting voices? These are some of the areas that we hope to highlight today.
That's right, that's right. But let's do this. Let's bring you our top stories for today so you get to know what we're doing for the next 3 hours here on Breakfast Central. Don't forget, it's a full show, a full circle here at News Central, because it's not just on Breakfast Central, but of course the focus would be on Democracy Day. But let's start off here and bring to you what our top stories will look like here on News Central. Today, on our special edition, we'll be analyzing Nigeria's democratic journey. We'll look at it from the time of the military era up until when Nigeria, of course, gained democracy. Nigeria's democracy at 26. What have we learned in the past 26 years? Are we doing pretty well or not? And one aspect we want to look at is the health sector. We do have very seasoned and experienced medical practitioners who will be joining us here. Leadership and credibility in Nigeria since democracy, a very thought-provoking conversation that should be had, and we're going to do that. Democracy and a deepening insecurity in Nigeria, worrisome, right? We'll have all these conversations and more in a moment. Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. Ahead of June 12 Democracy Day in Nigeria, some residents of River State say they have no reason to mark the day following the suspension of the legislative and executive arms of government, while some residents are calling for the reinstatement of the governor and lawmakers in the spirit of the sacrifices characterizing the June 12 Democracy Day. Others insist that the root cause of the crisis between the suspended governor and the assembly members must be resolved so as to chart a path forward for the state. Well, you wouldn't hear it from me. Let's meet with our correspondent who indeed put this package together, Biola Festus. Take a look.
It has been 2 months and 3 weeks into the suspension of Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy Ngozi Odum, and the 27 lawmakers through the declaration of emergency rule by the presidency and the installation of a sole administrator to manage the affairs of the state.
The head of the executive arm of the government has chosen to collapse the legislature to enable him to govern without the legislature as a despot.
As other states prepare to mark Democracy Day with vibrant activities highlighting their governance achievements, the streets of Port Harcourt remain quiet, devoid of significant preparations. Residents claim that they have no reasons to celebrate, citing the continued decline in commercial activities and overall livelihood as their reasons.
Nothing like democracy in Rivers State, except they bring back our governor. Is the person that will stand, all of us will follow him for back.
We are suffering. Nothing is moving. It's business that help us in these River States. But we, the business women and men, we are doing nothing.
The rift between suspended Governor Fubara and members of the River State House of Assembly culminated in an impeachment process, with the lawmakers accusing Fubara of misconduct. However, political elites in River State are advocating for reconciliation between the legislative and executive arms as a panacea for their reinstatement. They argue that if not properly resolved, both parties may revert to their confrontation after reinstatement, hindering smooth progress in governance.
The suspension on both sides should be lifted for the Constitution to show its presence. But if it is as per peace, there's still a long way to go. There has been no peace. We've not started they've not even started scratching the issue. But if the president called a truce in order for there to be peace, I know that there has not been one meeting between the governor as the head of the executive arm and the speaker or the legislature.
Meanwhile, the Grassroots Development Initiative (GDI), the platform on which the suspended governor campaigned for his election, still harbors resentments against him. Coordinator of the initiative, Bright Amehole, observed that the governor is associating with those who do not mean well for him and advised him to distance himself from some of his followers whose dispositions are not in tandem with his professed commitment to peace.
Sim Subara finds himself now in a tight corner where he cannot control his followers again. I would even suggest to him to, instead of him to die on their behalf because it's not Jesus Christ, he should be able to chase them away and then take a new stand as to make sure that peace returns to River State. Because if peace does not return to River State, Sim Fubara should be held responsible. We don't want Sim to come back. Because the way Sim has dealt with us for 2 years now is not something that we can just easily forget. We fought for him, he got what he wanted, and then abandoned us.
The intervention by President Tinubu was widely seen as a stitch that saved 9, believed to have averted further crises. Notwithstanding, Barrister Lawrence, a senior advocate of Nigeria, has urged the president to lift the emergency rule imposed on Rivers State in the spirit of June 12 Democracy Day, which he says is characterized by sacrifices.
The buck stops on the president's table, not on anybody's table, because the power he exercised was donated to him by Section 305 of the Constitution and not to any other person. So he has the latitude, he has the amplitude to say 3 months down the line, enough is enough.
The impact of the political crisis in Rivers State has evidently taken a toll on the common people, affecting them adversely. As they say, the ball is in the president's court to decide when it's appropriate to restore the democratically elected officials in the state. How soon that would be, for now, no one knows. In Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, for News Central, Biola Festus.
We've brought you update from Rivers State, and all through the show this morning, we were taking you around Nigeria to feel the pulse of Nigerians regarding their thoughts on Nigeria's Democracy Day. There have been speculations about the position of the suspended Rivers State governor. We've started to see a lot of speculations online, but let's see if it's something that the president of the country will be addressing when he does address the nation. But moving on, today on this special Democracy Day edition of Breakfast Central, we're taking a look at our nation's democratic journey, examining the past and the present presidential administrations that have shaped our country since 1999. Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999 marked a new era, beginning with President Olusegun Obasanjo. Since then, we've seen leadership transitions that have defined our political and economic landscape. Following Yar'Adua's passing in 2010, Vice President Goodluck Jonathan assumed office. Jonathan's presidency was marked by economic growth, expansion in telecommunications sector, and educational reforms.
That's right. However, security challenges, particularly the rise of Boko Haram, tested his administration's resilience. In 2015, Nigeria witnessed a historic moment, the first democratic transition when incumbent president lost an election. His administration faced economic recessions, but also implemented social investment programs and infrastructure projects. Tinubu's administration has prioritized economic reforms, including the removal of fuel subsidies and exchange rates unification. His policies have sparked debate, with some praising his bold moves, while others express concerns over economic hardship. Looking at this journey, what lessons can Nigerians take from our democratic experience? We're going to look at the military rulership up until now and its impact, especially on democracy. Is democracy what Nigerians truly need? But anyway, joining us to my left, I do have the Chairman, ADC Lagos State, Mr. George Ashiru. He's here with us live. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
My pleasure.
And of course, we do have a fiery analyst, one who, according to many who have watched you, they say he spits facts and is always ready to defend what he says. Anyway, we do have Mr. Dr. John who's here with us as well. Thank you so much. First of all, we're going to say that we're expecting to hear the presidential speech, which is the norm that we always get. Before we go to the nitty-gritty of our conversation. But no presidential speech. Is this something that... Yes. It's going to be done in the joint session, but is this something that you're used to?
I don't think it matters really, obviously from the point of view of some of us who already have a position made concerning the style of governance. of the president and the party in power. So whether they say, they will repeat the same thing that we've heard on October 1 and May 29, it will be a long list of all the things that we have done. And it's just like asking a parent to talk about their parenting style. They will say all the wonderful things they're doing for their children, but the children will come back and tell you, but you're a bad parent. The children will tell you, we have heard it. You said it when we were 8, you said it when you were 20. You always say you're a good parent, you sent us to school, you did this. But what is important to us as children, you never listened, you didn't ask, and you didn't solve the problem. So we're not likely to hear anything different from all of the cacophony of the things we've been hearing from government. I do say that we should not forget that the most important reason we're celebrating June 12th is June 1993. It's not about the current administration. It's about some people that fought so that the military could step aside. So what did they do to give us this very long stretch of democracy we're having? We need to go and find that formula, because the purpose for which they fought for, we have to ask ourselves, are we enjoying it or are we enduring it? Let me just leave that for now.
That reminds me of the line in the former national anthem that says, the labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. Maybe I should ask Mr. or John, do you think that the labor of our heroes past are in vain? Some argue that it is. Some say, no, we're still in, it's a journey, so it probably isn't.
Okay, I think it's actually a journey, and it must be made clear that we might not have arrived at where we want to be. We might not have got the kind of leadership that we desire as a nation, but it's also a truism that we'll continue to grow as a nation. One of the very beautiful things about democracy is the fact that it's a government of conversation. We'll continue to point government to the right direction, and we'll continue to elicit interest within the community for people to have interest in how they are governed. I think one major issue that has happened between 1999 and now that I'll quickly touch on is the fact that people have lost hope in the process of government, and as a result of that, we'll continue to see a similar style over the years, because there's not been a deliberate effort to bring in new ideas, new ideology into government, because people, they can't come to your house to bring you out. You have to, first of all, show interest. But what our democratic experience has taught the people is to lose interest in the process of governance. So we are growing, we are coming up, and I believe that with the interest that I've seen within the community since 2023, if we can continue to elicit that kind of interest, we will do better in the future.
Okay, so I think let's now set the groundwork. We'll come back to 1993, but I think that we should start from the beginning, the official beginning of Nigeria's democracy, which is 1999. President Olusegun Obasanjo, you think about him, and there are many things that you think about. You think about him clearing our foreign debt, the $18 billion foreign debt. You think about, setting up of EFCC, ICPC. You think about so many positives, but also think about a number of negatives, right? You think about what we're seeing happening in 2025 in terms of emergency rule and suspension of executive elected officials. It's not the first time we're seeing that. We did see that in President Olusegun Obasanjo's time. But let's get your sense, Mr. Shiru, of the gains that we've maybe consolidated over the years that started from President Olusegun Obasanjo's time in office.
All right. So, well, the democracy that came in with General Olusegun Obasanjo is the Third Republic. So some of us did enjoy Shagari's period. Some of us were in federal schools during Shagari's period. We enjoyed free, if not completely free education with bursaries. We had train rides from Federal Government College, Kaduna, back to Lagos. We were able to take our passports and go to the airport without having to get a visa as a Commonwealth passport. I could take Naira from here when I was doing my A-levels in the UK and change it at the airport. I could pay my school fees by myself. My parents would send me at the age of 16. I'm off on my own, and I would have my school fees in my pocket, and I would pay. And if I needed anything from the central bank, I would get a letter from there. I would come here, central bank would give me a draft in foreign currency. I competed for Nigeria in 1987. I got Federal Military Scholarship, the Lagos State Scholarship. So I'm telling you that the best years of Nigeria are way, way well behind us. But that's my point. You know, some of us were born just before the Civil War. So I can give you the longest story of Nigeria transitioning over the years. And you can never, ever compete with the best years of Nigeria of the 70s and 80s. You can't. You can't compete with when dollar was $2 to 1 naira. What do you want to use to compete? People weren't worried about bridges then. People were not worried even about Japan or traveling abroad. My grandmother would go to the UK, and on her way back, she would say, take your pounds, give me my naira back at the airport. Come on. If you don't experience the best as a yardstick, you will think that because we have 20-story high-rise, we're developing. No, that's not how you measure development. It is the parity in comparison of people, the ability of people to wake up one morning and just say, I want to buy a car, and they can afford it in 3 months. That is what they call economic development. So it's not building big houses, international conference center, which, by the way, I supplied the machine that was used to clean it as far back as 1993, 92. Yes, from the UK, powered access platform. So what do you want to tell me the story? I was there. I was there in 1993. I was almost arrested for one of those that went around shouting that, we will not agree, we will not agree. I was in school in the days of, what's his name, IBB. You know, when that bridge was being built, this Third Milan Bridge, it was still passing from the University of Lagos. We used to see it. And we were the ones that confronted the tear gas. So come on, anybody will come and start telling me they are developing. No, it is only when you have those standards you can compare. So unfortunately, a lot of people will see infrastructure and think that's development. If you are going to work on basic infrastructure, go to Ivory Coast, go to Rwanda, go to Nairobi, then we are competing again. You will realize we are not even near the countries whose GDPs are less than that of Lagos State. No, the most important evidence of development anywhere is the ability of the people to afford a sensible lifestyle, HDI. And that is what has been missing. Every single person in power thinks that by building more roads, building more bridges, high-rise centers, then they can point to something visible. But the most important development is the people's development. How can our income per capita be less than it was 40, 50 years ago, when other countries in the world is triple? I mean... So at what point did it change, and what were the factors? You see, the consistency of everything is based on comparison. So you look at China. China 40 years ago, struggling out of communism. They built their people, the vocational training, technical training, technological training. The people were empowered. They allowed capitalism to thrive. And what has happened? Their GDP has increased. That's why America is fighting them now, because they feel like, from nowhere. Hong Kong, Taipei, that we used to say made in Taiwan. Now made in Taiwan is, hey, it's global. The income per capita of people from Taiwan is over $25,000. It was the same as Nigeria 40 years ago. So what it tells us is that, one, we have a challenge with leaders understanding priority. Two, we have a problem in consistency in policy management. But the most important thing is that we lack knowledge in governance. Because if you understand governance, you will understand the importance of laying good foundations for the future. So when you lay good foundations, the foundation is what we now come to enjoy in the future. But what people do is, I get into power, I have a few projects, bang, bang, bang. Then I will do a ribbon cutting ceremony so that I can go for the next election. And then if I lose, somebody will come in and say, that was his time. Let me now do my own. And then we are repeating nonsense. And that's why we are not growing. We are retrogressing as a nation. Unfortunately, I no longer use infrastructure as a basis of development. If there was a time, I would come back from England and I would look and say, wow, Nigeria is developing. Then I see the poor people are still poorer. Then I get depressed. I see people struggling to pay rent, and I'm thinking, okay, there's something not quite right here. This is really should be the focus. But we have either deliberately kept them poor, but we don't know how to empower people. And I think that is what any government should be looking at now. Not focusing on giving contracts to building bridges, building this, building that, and forgetting what should be the first principles of development, people.
Well, Dr. John, I mean, let's get your take on this. We're looking at the past and coming down to the present. That's what we're looking at right now. What would you say our democracy is missing compared to the military regime? I mean, during the military regime, we've heard Mr. Shiru break it down, the things that were enjoyed, the things that Nigerians benefited from. And now it's democracy. What is it that we are not benefiting from?
Okay, so I think the major issue with democracy since 1999 is actually a struggle to either rebuild what has been spoiled, because the reality is that a lot of things have actually gone on between 1986 and when democracy returned in 1999. Either a struggle to rebuild what has been damaged or a struggle to win the next election. And when you look at these two, it requires a lot of leadership. And one of the subjects that, I keep laying emphasis on the subject of leadership in Nigeria, it's the concept of traditionalism. Traditionalism is a concept. If you go to the traditional ruler of your community, for example, he expects you, I come from a ruling house, he expects you to drop something. When the Oba of my community comes to my house, he still expects me to drop something. So traditionally, leadership is about taking, not necessarily about giving in Africa. So when we imported this into our practice, either as a pastor or if you go visit your pastor, you are expected to drop something. If he comes meet you, you're also expected to drop something. We imported that into democracy. And even in areas where systems have been built to stop people from taking from government, they still cut corners to actually take from government. So primarily, leadership in democracy or in Africa is about self. And any project, any policy and program that does not support self is not prioritized in government. And I like how Mr. Ashiru put it. You see, for some of us who study leadership, one major gap that we have seen there's no problem with our democracy. There's no problem with even the Nigerian people. We only have a question of leadership. And for you to know, I am one of the few Nigerians by privilege who have traveled throughout 4 sectors of the economy. The way people behave in the private sector was the same way people were behaving when I was in the civil service. The same way people were behaving in the civil service is the same way people were behaving when I was running for office. So you look at all of these things from our political system, you discover that the question mark has always been of leadership. And what is the major problem with leadership? Leadership usually is about suspension of self at the benefit of the society. So anything that puts, I love infrastructure. I am completely against the fact that infrastructure is not growth. I love infrastructure. But one of the things that I have seen in the process of rehearsing what we have done so far in Nigeria is that any major infrastructure you see in Nigeria is still serving the interest of the man who builds it. Either the man is building it because of next election, or the man is building it because the contractor has settled at the end of the day. These are facts that should not be lied about. So the question of our democracy is a general question of our mindset at the moment. Because there's a philosophy that points to the fact that how you do one thing is how you do all things. So our philosophy, our mindset of growth and development of governance and practice at the moment is the fact that leadership is about serving self, and anything that does not serve self is not a priority in the question of our leadership.
So how do we then look forward to this change? If the same things that you're talking about, Mr. Shiru gave us a breakdown of what life was, and in fact, I was looking at you with awe because I can't relate to a number of the things that you said. I did not experience them. Yep. I've only heard about them from my parents, uncles, and aunties, and it feels like such a far cry from what the reality is today. If we're saying that over the course of the years, I always make reference to Chinua Achebe's book, the problem, or I think it's the trouble with Nigeria, the problem with Nigeria. Yeah, and in that book, the major thing he talked about was how our major challenge in Nigeria is leadership. And all the things that he complained about. He talked about us having to fix up our house by 2000. And I laughed. When I was reading that part, I said, wow, this is over 20 years later. Imagine what will happen if Chinua Achebe could see where Nigeria is. So what do we need to do differently? Because even the younger people, you say you put younger people in office, people go there and perpetrate the same cycle. So what do we need to change?
Yes, again, it piggies back to what I said about the foundation that was laid. So how do you expect people that were brought up in corruption to understand any other way of leading? If when you were doing your work, you were told to fiddle certain things, that's even to get to university. You know, when you get to university, you're already using something to dub in order to do your project. So you have laid the foundation about how you are going to live your life, just like you said. How you do one thing is how you do others. So if you've never learned how to do things right, you will develop a complex. What's the name of that complex where, you know, some people think they are, You know, they are not what they think they are.
Yeah.
You develop
complex?
No, there's a phrase for it. But that's not even the key thing. Corruption, we know, is the heart of the reason some of the problems we have in this country thrives. So corruption is easy when your focus is on big projects. When your focus is on infrastructure. Like I said, I have no problem with infrastructure. I have a problem with it being your priority. If the people is your priority, it will determine the kind of infrastructure you invest in. So when somebody is building a Atlantic city, and not a single Nigerian can enter the gate of that place, but that land belongs to Nigeria, doesn't that tell you where the priority is? So you are putting billions of Nigeria's resources to build something just for 0.00001% of people. That means you never thought of the people when you are building it. So it is that same selfishness, that cultural self-centeredness that we've had for hundreds of years, where we're used to everybody serving the king and the rulers. We are carrying it. So the democracy we are practicing now is not pure, true democracy. You know, I use one phrase, it may sound insulting to those in power. I say our democracy consists of being given the power to choose our next dictator. We are simply given the power to choose our next ruler, because the person is not representing our interest. Now, I'm a person who is in politics. I'm a political party chairman. I have also worked directly with ministers in government. I've served in government agencies as a result of the development of my career, including when I was in Lagos State as a chairman, even of a sports organization when I was young. I can see over 30, 40 years directly the kind of culture that exists within the public service that encourages what we're having as a problem today. But instead of people to reform the public service, they're focusing on grabbing power. If you want to destroy corruption in Nigeria, go to the public service. There is nothing a politician can steal because he doesn't sign any documents. It's not, no politician in power signs any check. The president doesn't sign check. Governors don't sign checks. Commissioners don't sign checks. They have a director of finance administration that does it. They are the ones who will raise the vouchers. They are the ones that will disburse the money. So are you telling me that money is going in the wrong place and they don't know? But what are they doing about it? As long as I get my cut, I don't care. But if you reform the civil service and you pay people well, and you change the culture of service in the civil service, and they push back against political leaders and say, sir, no, this is wrong, this is against the rule, this is against the law, over a period of time, politicians will know, well, if you go to service, these guys won't give you a chance, because they think about Nigeria first. But back again to what you said, those in public service, those in politics, those in private service, everybody's thinking new. And it's the culture itself started once we imbibe democracy. Democracy has a tendency to individualize service. Military talks about unity. A military cannot win a war if they're not unified. Central command, central thinking, central way of doing things. That is why communist countries have faster development than us. Like China, like Russia, like even Dubai. All those Saudi Arabian countries, where if they have a benevolent ruler, oh God, you will see the evidence in that place. But if they have a terrible ruler, everybody suffers as well. So I think it comes back to the fact that, like he said, and like everybody has said, including Chino Achebe, there's no problem with the landscape of Nigeria. But we have never had a proper method of building leaders who are thinking Nigeria first. Even our young people go online today, the way they curse Nigeria, those same people you want to hand over Nigeria to them? You can't hand over Nigeria to them because there is a foundation that's been laid and Nigeria is a toxic environment. So they will never give their best to Nigeria. As a man who was in sports, back when we were young, when we were told to go and represent this country, we were not thinking of allowance, $100 a day. We were not thinking so. Someone like myself, I was so glad that, oh, I'm going to represent Nigeria, that my grandmother, my mother, my family, they sat together and they prayed for me and they said, wow, government picking. I didn't know scholarship would come after it. I didn't know they would give us 10 million naira each. I didn't know they would do this at what? At 19 or 20. I didn't realize that you have become a figure, that you come out from the airport and they put these gallons on you and they put you on NTA. And subsequent to that, guess what happened? Let me tell you how back what we were doing something right before. That's my point. I'm just saying let's go back to find what we are doing right. I come back from an international event. NTA interviews you. The producer likes what you're doing. He says, why? Please, I need you to come and be presenting this program for us, Youth Scene. I get on television at a young age. And you know those days there was no competition, it was just NTA. So every Sunday evening you will see me all over the country. Every Sunday for almost 2 years, presenting youth scene as a young leader. I got to meet Nigeria, Nelson Mandela, as a result of that, when he first came to Nigeria. That is somebody purposely building me, right? And modeling me for leadership. Yeah. But somewhere along the line, people just started thinking, instead of me putting George, let me put my son. Instead of me bringing him and then you get popular, let me bring somebody. That is where we started to mix it up. The politics is designed for self-centeredness. So we need to change the nature of politics. And if we do so, we will get to where we're going. And the only way to change it is for people to vote those who really want to serve them, not simply those who represent their religion, their tribe, those who really want to serve. And you can tell, because out of the abundance of the heart,
the mouth
speaks.
Finally, I mean, because we're really pressed for time, we have a lot to cover. Thank you so much. But let's also get your final thoughts on this. Looking at the 26 years that we've been in democracy, in comparison to the military rule, what I would like it to, everybody says we should never go back to the military rule. That's it, because we're a democratic nation. But what do you make out of our journey so far in 26 years?
Okay, so in 26 years, like I said when I was opening, looking at it very critically, one of the major issues with democracy is the fact that there's no sense of urgency in execution of programs and policy. But I would say with utmost sense of responsibility that I see that our democracy is growing. When we started democracy in 1999, one of the major things, one of the major issues that bedeviled our practice was the fact that when you go out to vote, somebody will just come from the back and take the entire ballot snatching, take the entire ballot and all of that. I shared a story with you the last time I came here of a senator who actually won his primary election and his name came out on the INEC list as the candidate of his party. And the other one didn't do anything. He was just in his house. His name is Ilanwo. So when journalists go to him, he said, no, go and meet my campaign manager. In other words, the PDP had a candidate, his name out published on INEC papers and all of that. And there's another man who didn't do anything. He was just in his house. And this man won election. The man that his name came out of the won election. And before this man will leave Ondo State and get to Abuja, the other person had appeared in the National Assembly and has been sworn in as the senator. That is how our democracy was between 1999 and 2000. We may not have got there, but gradually we are moving. And that's why respectable people can actually come out today and say, no matter how terrible these things are, we must be part of it. And you can begin to pinpoint them. Usually, before now, especially in religious organizations, they will have to warn you, don't move near politics. But everybody has suddenly realized now that government is the God that they can see. And they have deliberately, they have begun to put in input into the process of government. So I would say we are not where we were supposed to be, but gradually we are going there. And to have Mr. Shitu as chairman of ADC in Lagos, to have a lot of credible people, I believe that the future is still very great. And I do not want people to miss, because what I've seen by my generation, you know, you talked about it, Sai, about when you go on social media, the major mistake we have made is the fact that we have actually misinterpreted people in power to mean our nation. So we do not like the way they behave. And instead of coming out to say we do not like, we just translate that hatred to Nigeria. And you cannot continue to have that toxic environment and want to have development. If somebody does not behave very well, President Tinubu, you have not behaved well. It does not stop the fact that I will go out there, any opportunity I have, I talk about the glory of the nation. We may have gloomy leadership, but there's glory in this nation that as long as we try to get credible people to lead us across all units of leadership, across all units of leadership. I told you the biggest request of bribe that I've received in my life was not when I was in government, was when I was in the private sector. So I cross all the units of government. We'll continue to have credible people, then at the end of the day,
I mean, you're talking about
criticizing
individuals and not making it a thing about Nigeria.
It's not about Nigeria.
Unfortunately, there are those who argue with you that if you do that now, it might not be well received. We have many cases.
Out of many, one. that wall represents what is seen as a standard of what they came out of.
Right.
That's why Nigerians are judged all over the world by virtue of one person's mistake. They assume it's a culture of the nation.
Yes.
So whether we like it or not, the brand and the brandee
is almost inseparable. Exactly. Gentlemen, thank you for your time with us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have
My
you.
pleasure.
And happy Democracy Day.
Happy Democracy Day.
We still will be exploring more conversations about Nigeria's democracy, where we're coming from, where we're heading to. What, of course, we've been asking people what their thoughts and their feelings about Nigeria's Democracy Day is. So let's take a look.
I don't think we have democracy. It's not democracy. What we are practicing is not democracy. A democracy whereby everybody have freedom. A democracy where you have water, you have electricity, and so many things. But our people, kind of people we have in government, now they only come to deceive us and say they are democracy. What is democracy? Where you're supposed to have like 3 parties, 4 parties. Like in America, you have 2 parties. But here, one man is sitting somewhere buying all party for one party. That's not democracy.
The Democracy Day is the day that we feel that we, the people of Nigeria, have power to say something, and in one accord is a way to move our country forward.
I feel we are caged. We don't have rights anymore. I feel our rights are being misused by bad government.
We're not benefiting anything. In this country, you're on your own. The rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poorer.
What they're supposed to give me are you? Even education, 0. One-man party system. Nigeria is so corrupt, whereby they don't even know what they are doing.
Most of us feel that maybe those in power, they don't care about what is going on the social media. It's a lie. I could recollect there was a day that, I don't know if it's a comedy or something, where the president is saying that he no longer listen to social media again because he don't want his high blood pressure to go up. That means that they do listen. So with that, if we speak one voice, we have power.
Some people don't even know what is democracy. You understand me? So you do anyhow, I do anyhow. Even when the law is here, everybody knows. But you're on your own. If you don't get money, if you not get money or you not get connection, you're on your own.
I don't feel that democracy is there. The freedom to speak your mind, the freedom to act. A lot of people came out in election trying to speak with their vote, but it didn't feel like it was being counted or even worth anything.
We enjoyed democracy during Goodluck. We enjoyed democracy during Yaradua. We enjoyed democracy during Obasanjo. But under Tinubu, there's no democracy.
So nothing like democracy. In fact, me, I say I don't even want to hear about democracy because it's not working.
Democracy is just a name. No action is being reflected on it.
They say uneasy lies the head that wear the crown. It's very easy to criticize. When you are up there, you know that there are some decisions that only the president cannot just take. You have to carry your people along. Well, as a Nigerian, I pray for him that wisdom that was given to Solomon will be given to him to do things right, that people will be happy.
All right, thank you so much for joining us right away. Well, today marks 26 years since Nigeria as a nation embarked on the journey of democratic governance, a system meant to ensure progress, equity and development in all sectors, including the country's healthcare sector. But how has democracy shaped Nigeria's health sector? Have policies, funded and reforms kept up with the growing demands of our population? Or are we losing more of best medical hands to the jackpot syndrome over poor policies? On this special edition this morning, our Democracy Day broadcast, we shall explore the outlook of Nigeria's healthcare sector. How well has it fared under the democratic system? Are Nigerians getting access to quality health care? Well, joining us to x-ray the outlook of Nigeria's healthcare sector, 26 years of our return to democracy, we do have with us here, joining us very quickly, is a public health consultant and, of course, a publisher, Health Nika. I wanted to ask Nika. It reminded me of the pidgin English, short Nika. Health Nika. Anyway, it's good. Dr. Tuyi is here with us as well. Thank you so much for being here. And not just Dr. Tuyi, we also have from College of Medicine, University of Lagos, one who has taken time to join us well, senior lecturer, Dr. Tosin Akinsola. Thank you so much. We've brought the medical experts in-house. And this is a very, very important conversation we must have because oftentimes the healthcare sector is being neglected when we discuss democracy. And whether we like it or not, in the past 26 years, we've seen the rise of Nigeria's healthcare sector. I remember the days where, some of our uncles would say back then, doctors from foreign countries would fly in, they would work in Nigeria, and they would live in Nigeria. But these days, we still have them, but we rather refer to them as just consultants because they come in and then they go out. But let me start with you, Dr. Tuyi. 26 years, how would you rate Nigeria's health care or medical sector?
Nigerian health sector is very dynamic. Health sector generally is very dynamic. When you have 44 million people, you can't compare yourself to when you're 200 million people. But basically, there are things you look at, which are the indices. Now, if you want to do a snapshot of Nigeria health system right now, okay, you have the life expectancy of 54 years for men, 59 years for women. That's not too tidy. Now, and you look at all our figures, 114 children infant per 1,000 births are dying. So we are number 2 after Sudan. So Sudan 115, we are 114. And you look at maternal deaths. But then if you ask, what are the things causing this death? Measles, malaria, malnutrition, the chest infection, birth problems. Simple things that you can really do and resolve. Okay, if you look at the maternal health, the same thing, high figure. We are in what we call a multi-dimensional poverty, not just related to health alone, education, housing, basic infrastructure, opportunities. So these are multi-dimensional poverty that also impact negatively on health. And what you have seen over time is increment in all these things. If you look at TB, we have a high number of TB, we have high number of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, we also have high number of TB and HIV. So you look at what is killing us, you wonder that, okay, what are we really doing in essence? And at the end of the day, you want to find out, why are we having all these terrible figures? You look at the finance. Here we are. We're doing 5.1% of budget on health. Whereas, how many years ago, 2000, in Abuja, we sat down, we said, you guys, we're going to put 15% of our budget to health. But we have never reached it. But Cabo Verde is doing more than 15%. South Africa is doing more than 15%. We are still at 5.1%. In reality, in 2024, we had about 1.6 something trillion for health. It has increased, the budget, but it increased to 2.65 trillion in 2025. But in dollar value, it decreased. It decreased in dollar value. And most of the inputs into health system are dollar-based. Active pharmaceutical ingredients, this equipment, that equipment. So in reality, our health budget is not increasing. That's why I feel like we're not doing we're not even doing 15%. And interestingly, what becomes concerning is that critical aspect of those health budgets are being cut. You are cutting budget to National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, where we have 33,000 primary healthcare centers. Only about 7,000 of them are working. So we are not getting it. Then secondly, you are cutting, you've increased budget for immunization, but you are cutting that of family planning. Where Nigeria, an average woman is having how many children? 5, 6 children. And then you are now complaining that you are seeing a lot of, and our population in 2030 will be 236 million people. Ooh. So now you look at that dissonance, things that are not adding up. Now, if you could now come to human resources for health, you and I, you just mentioned the ACPA. In terms of numbers, how can you be looking for less than 30,000 doctors to be treating 200 and something people? And even the health minister himself told us, he said, you guys, the health workforce we have, including doctors, nurses, everything, is just 400,000 people. We have a deficit of 18 million. How are you going to get it? How are you going to train additional 18 million people? So it's a lot of challenges, the health thing is looking at us in face like this, and we're saying, wow, where are we? But at the end of the day, the government is trying to do something, and we must also acknowledge what they're trying to do. Okay, they're saying that we're unlocking the value chain in the pharmaceutical, in the health sector, so that you can manufacture, you can do this, you can do that. But again, how can you manufacture without light? How can you manufacture without light? I've been involved in trying to manufacture something in this country. I went to South Korea and everywhere. I came back and couldn't do because I can't account for the cost of energy.
Okay, I want you to follow up on something that you said. You talked about our budget and how much we've allocated to the budget defense. Before I come to you, sir, let's talk about what the actual challenge is with our budget. And I agree with you that there's an underfunding, right? The agreement with Abuja was 15%. What we're doing currently is 5.8%, which comes to about 2.48 trillion naira. There are those who argue that just like with defense, sometimes the problem is not allocating more funds, but that even the one that is being allocated is not properly managed. So whilst I agree with you that, yes, we need proper allocation to the budgets, the one that we currently have for health, the current allocation for health, is it being managed, remotely managed properly?
I agree that we're not getting the right bang for the bucks. That is an issue, okay? Now, even with the little I'm putting, what am I getting for it? Now, but in reality, the most crushing part of health funding we're facing is what we call out-of-pocket health expenses. 76, 77%. Sad. Now, what we call catastrophic health spending, because you see now, all of us, I'm trying to put on a cap now, just to, Abby. Should anyone have a catastrophic health issue, all the money will disappear now. How is it going to fund cancer care? How is it going to fund brain tumor? How is it going to fund a chronic this thing? Because he cannot do any more work that. So that gap is there. So you cannot talk of universal health care and not consider health for anybody, anywhere, without a limiting cost on the person. So in reality, what we have done right way, which I agree with her that, of course, we're not getting the right bang for the buck. What we have done right away is to look at it and say, okay, what are we going to do? We focus on the tertiary kind of thing. Quite interesting. It's nice that at the end of the day, we're having a 500-bedded hospital being opened recently in Abuja. Nice. I am kudos. But it's going to serve the top 1% of the population, because access to that is going to be difficult. It's costly to put on health system. Even like that, you cannot tell my person from Bodu, you know, how is he going to access that thing? Why is he going to pay for that kind of thing? So what is happening to the primary health center at Oriba? So these are the key issues, because I am embedded in the local, very local area, and I know what is going on. So what is happening to those primary health centers? Why should we have, in a way, that we are having 33,000 primary health care centers, only 7,000 are working? Now, when you're talking about the funding, okay, Tinubu government, you know, credibly added 2 million people to the National Health Insurance Scheme. Yeah. Now we have 19.2 million people. Just fast checking all this, I'm telling you, we have 19.2 million people, according to them, under National Health Insurance Scheme. Wait a minute, we are 220 million. Now 90 million people.
Only 90.
So what's happened to the remaining 200 million people? So in reality, you are pushing people, and then what has happened again is that, to a large extent, we are not having the right education in health. Everybody, Babalawo, pastor, this and that, they now look at the doctor and cast him and put the blame on him. Doctors, I went in a book launch. The next thing, everybody is hospital and doctors. I just look at them and smile. I say, you don't understand. You know, because the reality is that the education, that the guy would have gone here, gone there, and then it's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of toxic things outside there concerning the health system. And that's happens to be the low-hanging fruits that we can deal with. Spend the right money on information and education.
All right, let's talk about education now and bring Dr. Akinsola into the conversation. When it comes to education, we've had people who have argued as well that Nigeria's cost for training medical professionals is extremely subsidized. Right? So I want you to speak to that. I can see the reaction on your face. I want you to speak to that, as well as the current Japa syndrome. It's almost like when you meet any medical professional, the question is not, are you leaving? It's almost like, when are you leaving? So give us a picture of what that looks like for you.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, when my colleague just made mention that the infant mortality is 74 per 1,000 live births. For our audience that are there, they need to know what is the interpretation of this. That interpretation of 74 per 1,000 live births means that one Nigerian child for every 13 do not reach their age 1. That's the meaning. Then for under 5 mortality, that is 117 per 1,000. What is the interpretation of it? It means that one Nigerian child for every 8 do not survive to their 5th birthday. So you can now see these how poor the indices are. And to talk about the Japa, actually, as a matter of fact, about a couple of months ago, the government made mention that they should recruit new medical personnel, doctors, nurses, and other personnel. But have they talked about who are those in charge of teaching and training these new medical doctors? That is the area that actually has been neglected by the government. And this need to be taken care of at headlong. And what do we mean by that? For instance, in medical practice and teaching profession, we have what we call a residency training program. And this residency program, some of them, depending on the specialty, it takes them about 5 to 7 years after trip before they get their fellowship. And when they get this fellowship, you find out that in health and education, they are siames that cannot be divorced from each other. And when they become fellowship, become consultant in the teaching hospital. Now, when there is now opening in the College of Medicine, which is involve training and teaching the medical students and other medical areas. Now, when they want to move, they will have to relinquish their full-time status in the teaching hospital. Now, moving on to College of Medicine, where they're not going to get a full-time. That means that they are doing 2 jobs. Are you getting my point? Now, their total package for one job, if they are under the teaching hospital, is more than 2 jobs they are taking now. So that's why most of those who are even professionals, who are specialists in the teaching hospital, there is no incentive for them to move to the teaching area. And this area, the government actually needs to address it very urgently, because we have a short of teaching manpower in the medical profession. And not only that, even including other area of specialty in the university. Can you imagine if a professor of medicine having less than 600,000 naira in a month? It is really appalling. And these are some of the things that cause many people not to have interest in teaching profession. Like we have many people that have Japa syndrome, but those who remain, because out of sheer patriotism, there should be an incentive for them to be able to sustain in this teaching environment in medical field.
But you didn't, I wanted you to still address the question I asked about those who say that medical training in Nigeria is highly subsidized. So they use that as an argument to say that they're doing so much for those in the medical profession, so they're expecting that loyalty returned to Nigerians, that if you're not paying, so you're not paying as expensive as your counterparts in the West and in other parts of the world, you should be able to at least show some measure of loyalty. I want you to respond to that.
If you're talking about, in terms of subsidy you are talking about, but I don't know how many, what is the percentage? That's the fact we need to look about. Even for this one of net fund by federal government, how many students are actually benefiting from it? The fact is that they actually subsidy in the training of manpower, but what is the percentage? Percentage actually, if you want to look at it, is less than 5%. And we are talking about teeming population of over 200 million. So there exists subsidy. But what is it? Because we have to talk about figures. The next one we are talking about, the way it is that the university uses it as an avenue for them to increase the school fees. And we look at how many students are actually benefiting from this net fund they're talking about. So that is it. It's not that it doesn't exist, but we're talking about how many people, what is the percentage? That is what we need to look at in over 200 million teeming populations?
My senior lecturer, you'll be surprised I disagree with you. You understand? Because what are we talking about? Everybody that has gone through Nigerian university, well, if you are talking about subsidy, they were also subsidized. It wasn't a thing that you brought medical people out and subsidized. Because, you see, at the time I was paying 90 naira for my accommodation in a year, that's equivalent to like close to $300. So you understand what I'm talking about? What was salary when I first left medical school? I was getting 600 naira, 420 naira. If we add this thing to it, call, maybe it gets to 600 naira. So, you know, I don't know where people just woke up one day and considered this subsidy, okay? I knew that every of my textbooks were bought. It was not given to me by government. I don't know what government pays lecturer. Maybe if I was not paying money, politicians were not also paying money. Journalists were not paying money also. They were, all of us were subsidized. So you cannot then come and, if you in that context, look at doctors and then push it to them. So let everybody who knew that, and of course we did youth service now. We were also paying government. I mean, appreciating them. And then if you look at the remuneration, because if you are talking about subsidy now, you are saying that remuneration, and we are being remunerated like other people elsewhere. We are not being remunerated like that. So in reality, we are returning this so-called subsidy back to you in various ways. So because now, as you know, I had worked with Lagos State government for more than 21 years, and I can tell you that even at Massive Street Children's Hospital, the number of children I sit down and see, it's massive. Lots of people. That is subsidy being returned to you. So I think we should just rest that case. Even right now, I have, you know, words that I'm training in medical profession, both physiotherapy and health. We are paying. Well, we're not getting their fund. We're buying books. We're paying everything possible. So I think we should rest that subsidy. And I would like to have that discussion with anybody who felt that there's subsidy, and he should come and tell me why lawyers were not subsidized in university, why journalists were not subsidized, why politicians were not subsidized, and what and it has to be doctors that were subsidized. I think let's just rest it. I don't.
Well, just to look into this, 26 years, we're still focused on the democracy. What do you think we've gained from the medical sector from democracy?
You know, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Medicine thrives better when there's freedom, when you can talk, when you can do research. Let's enjoy that freedom to do research, to interact. That's wonderful. Medicine works better when, in fact, really, the university can be opened, because some of us suffered military. My university was closed for 8 months. University of Ife was closed for 8 months under Babangida. It was always quarrel. You know that kind of thing. It's not a different lecturer issue now. He will just look at you out of his whips and capes and close you down. So let us first of all enjoy that. Secondly, we are not where we are in reality, you know, because now you've seen quite a lot of Nigerians becoming experts in so many areas. Trained from here. Okay, so nice. That's great enough. So, and then even for us, doctors, we are talking more. We're interacting and intercoursing in terms of in the democratic space. And we saw what Ali Pate is doing. In his own way, he's trying to, you know, push here, push there. Of course, I understand his constraints. These are political constraints, because the first problem for health policy is health politics. You know, health politics determine health policy. And apart from when you now craft your policy, you still have to get to the level of implementation. When you see those health fellows that have been inducted presently and we're pushing them to the 774 local government, the question will be that, you see, you get to some local government, they ask you, who told you I need a health fellow? And that becomes the thing. You wonder, how do I assess it? So let's look at it. Yes, the figures are not rosy, but within the democratic space, we're trying to make sure something happens. And I will not say that the figures then is worse than now. But now, because when you are seeing population increasing, when you are seeing the changing phase of diseases, which all these lecturers are neighbor, you expect new reform. You expect to adapt. Yeah. And that's the adaptation that's the key issue. And then another thing he mentioned, which is the wrangling in between the medical different specialties and different cadres of health workers. this one is. And at the end of the day, people are not doing science. They want to become doctors. How is that possible? So if we want to deal with the health system, we have to start from the education, because the maximum we train now, 3,000 to 4,000. Maximum doctor per annum in this country, 3,000 to 4,000. Out of that, plenty will jackpot, some will jackpot inside. I would want to even be a journalist. No, some people within Nigeria will leave medical profession and go and do real estate and come and do journalism. Okay? They will just say, I'm tired. Because it could be quite draining to train to do. But again, what we need to do, if you ask me what we need to do, as we're talking now, we need to do a lot of signaling. Okay. To push a lot of health education. Because the more people are informed, the better choice they take in personal health. We have to do that. That is our low-hanging fruit. Secondly, let's make at least 20,000 out of these 33,000 primary health care centers, and let them make them work. I saw Pishan trying to, adopt some of these. Can we adopt more? What can we really do, to actually make this health system very local? Now, it used to be decentralization. Government is trying to do centralization again. We have to do more decentralization, decolonization. These are key health issues. We have to do more of decentralization, localization, decentralization, and decolonization. We have to really kind of focus on it. Because in reality, the health system we inherited was the one that's supposed to promote the interests of our colonizer.
All right.
That is basic.
Okay, speaking about promoting interests of... Okay, I know you wanted to say something. Okay.
I just want to let us also understand that our health system generally actually have 3 levels. We have the primary level, the secondary level, and tertiary level. And there has to be balancing in all these 3 levels for us to have health equity. For instance, in primary level, that's why we have the primary health care centers. Then we also have the secondary level, that is the general hospitals. And the tertiary level, that's where we have the teaching hospitals, where we have the specialists. So these 3 levels also, each of them has their own functions. So there's some diseases that you can actually handle at the primary level, where some at the secondary level, where some at the tertiary level. And another thing we also need to look at, apart from the training which I talk about, is that what about the affordability of these healthcare services by the teeming populace? For instance, you can see maybe a couple of days ago, there is one tertiary hospital that you see some family protesting that their loved one died after spending over 7 million. Yes. And they now said that before they go claim this corpse, they have to pay another 1.9 million. Yes. We also have a situation whereby a couple of months ago to a tertiary hospital that the families that are the one that are bringing generators for their family to be able to have it. These are some of some of basic amenities that are supposed to be provide for the healthcare workers. So these are some of the issues bedeviling the health sector generally.
And I thank you for speaking to that. Earlier, when Dr. Tuyi was speaking, he talked about the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. And unfortunately, even though we have seen an allocation for the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, you mentioned that 75% of Nigerians are still relying out of pocket to pay for their medical expenses, which then begs the question, what of health insurance? Again, another underrepresentation. But I want to go back to something. You said the healthcare system that we inherited is one that should benefit our colonizers. I once was in a room where the conversation was centered about the underrepresentation of Africans in clinical trials in sub-Saharan Africa. So I want us to speak about how much we're doing in terms of clinical trials, in terms of research and our dedication to research, because whatever medical progress we're looking to see, we cannot ignore the role that research has to play in it. So I want you to speak to it, Dr. Akinsola, your thoughts.
Yes, he's the lecturer.
Yes.
Let him talk.
Yes, there have been some, I think in terms of grant improvement in that, and one of it I can talk about is there is one I know of, Citrus, is actually domiciled in College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and being championed by Professor Bose Diafolabi. I think when I got it from
he's doing great
from Bill Gates, and Bill Gates even came. I think he came to Nigeria last week, and he also come and see, to witness this feat. So these are one of the things like that clinical trials now, and there's some other ones too that have already been get. These are areas that which we can actually improve our home research, our homegrown research, so that some of these problems, health problems, can also be addressed at our own local level. And to be sincere, government need to do a lot in this research. They need to do a lot of research in this medical research and other ancillary services too, so that problems relating to our HIV and AIDS, TB, and other diseases can also be nipped at the bud.
All right. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned Professor Bosede Afolabi. She's doing really great work with MRH Collective, and I've seen the amount of research they're putting and trying to reduce the numbers with regards to maternal mortality as well. Dr. Tuyi, I believe that Joe wanted to speak.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up, unfortunately, we're being told we're out of time, but just to wrap up, Dr. Tuyi, what is needed now that the federal government needs to address immediately? Just two things, briefly, as Nigeria marks 26 years.
Well, first of all, we commend the initiative they are taking. I mean, that's a bit forward-looking. Let's look at all the things they've done. So, but what if I were to be the government? This is the thing I would do. I have to deepen health communication, health literacy. I have to deepen it, really, because it helps you to take, because we need to focus on what are preventive. That is where our capability lies. Researches are expensive. Drugs are very expensive. Let us, first of all, do preventive. We have to further localize health systems. So we talk, we could localize, we push the primary health care center to have minimum of 50% of them being functional. By whatever means that can be done, we need to also do that. So in reality, I love the way they are trying to do, the value chains in health, manufacture here. But interestingly, the active API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, we have to import most of them. And most of these things are things that we can do research on and make those things to make our own drugs. So let's talk more about health. Let's educate people more about health. You'll see our billboard. I keep repeating this over and over again. When you are driving around Nigeria, what do you see on the billboard? One woman wearing wig, one drink hanging somewhere, one alcohol. Those things are not, you see, because they are visuals. They are subliminal messages being passed to you. Can you, for instance, pass a message to me how to prevent heart attack within that short period?
Yes,
can you pass a message to me, the likely next epidemic? And I've suggested that we need to set up a future fund for epidemic preparedness. Warehouse the National Center for Disease Control, warehouse it there. The future fund help you to respond to myriads of epidemics that we're seeing in the country.
I mean, if we had funds like that, maybe COVID-19 wouldn't have hit as much. And we're hearing potentials and fears of what might be in the future. So yes, that's a great suggestion. Dr. Tuyi Mebawondu and Dr. Tosin Akinsola, thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's been a great time speaking with you. We're still going to be exploring Nigeria's journey. We've looked at the health sector. We're looking into another sector right after this break. We're still celebrating 26 years of Nigeria's return to democracy, and now we turn our attention towards the very foundations of governance, that is leadership, accountability, and credibility. In a journey marked by both progress and setbacks, we ask our leaders living up to their promises, particularly when there are disgruntled voices over the state of governance in the country, with various groups calling for protests, even on a day like this. Has the economy been in the best of shapes and, that would have doused any thoughts of Nigerians going to the street on a day like this? How can we, as citizens, demand a new era of transparent and credible leadership? Joining us for this segment are human rights activist Aisha Yesufu and Chief Executive Officer of Growing Black, Zil Akarewe. Thank you very much for joining us. Aisha joins us virtually and Zil joins us here in the studio. Thank you for joining us this morning, lady and gentleman.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. So I think before we get into the conversation, just to get an overall sense from, actually, let's get from your sense in terms of where we are. We see a lot about public frustration, mass demonstrations. There have been calls for protests today. What are your thoughts about how we fared as a nation 26 years in terms of demanding and asking for what is rightfully ours from our leaders?
So I think the word is one. We failed.
You understand? 26 years ago, on March 30th, I had my first child, a son. He was born into Nigeria, and so he's 26 today, and that's how old Nigeria's democracy is. He's slightly a month plus older than Nigeria's democracy. And today, as his parent, I have failed to keep for him the Nigeria that I enjoyed 26 years ago. The Nigeria where I could walk, around safely in the country, where there was hope, where you're not thinking of leaving Nigeria and just finishing school and just jackpotting or something, one of those things. Yes, the Nigeria there wasn't the best of Nigeria, but there were so many things that were there. Life mattered more than it does today. And it's so sad that the democracy that a lot of people died for, the democracy that people put their lives on the line for, that democracy has been truncated. And so for me, as a parent, as a Nigerian, as an older generation Nigeria, I feel as an absolute failure. And I think we have to take responsibility and begin to make this right, because I would not want a situation whereby I'm leaving this for my children to continue to fight for this. They shouldn't be fighting for mundane things. They shouldn't be fighting for things that, even pre-independence, our grandparents were fighting for basic things like their lives matter in their own country. They should be treated as citizens and not slaves. So for me, today is actually a sad day. And someone else asking me, why was I wearing black? I'm like, I'm wearing black because, democracy is dead as it is, and we need to revive it. We need to bring it back to life. We need to not let the blood and the lives of people who fought so hard to get us to where we are today, for it to be wasted. Because I tell you, a lot of people are crying in heavens right now because of what democracy has been turned to in Nigeria.
All right. I mean, many would say that the institution that upholds democracy so strongly, particularly, let's talk about America. Let me come to Zil very quickly. The United States, of course, has been the picture of what true leadership should look like. There's so many names that we can mention, from the Martin Luther Kings down even to the presidents. We talk about Abraham Lincoln. You can mention so many names. Let's narrow it down to Nigeria. Do you think that Nigeria has a leadership crisis in the past 26 years? Or have we been able to equally, replicate what we see in other democratic functions?
If they had asked me this question in SSC, I would have walked out. I think what we are misunderstanding about the democracy in the first place is what a democracy is. So there's this assumption, and it's a fair assumption, and it's an assumption we've all held, and it's an assumption we all still hold. And that assumption is what is fatally flawed. It's not the leadership, it's the fact that we think we have a democracy, but we don't. This is not a democracy. There's a slight difference between a democracy and an electocracy. What a democracy is about the citizens, it's about accountability, it's about the institutions, it's about transparency, it's about focus of government. So I'll give an example. You mentioned America. Why do we mention America all the time? It's mainly not because their democracy is the best. Perfect. It's because of their transparency. Let's even an accountability. You want to get data from America, you can. Right? You want to know what's going on in the government spending what they spent on, you can. That transparency is a cardinal institution that carries a democracy. What we have is an electocracy. And the key difference between the two, and let me use an analogy. It's like you rent out your house for 4 years, right? And you never check on the tenant, you never go there, and you just hope that in 4 years, when he gives you back the keys, the house is in better condition. That's an electocracy. Democracy is you're running things together. It's like a partnership. It's the difference between being in a relationship and having a one-night stand. An electocracy is just about a ritual. Every 4 years, we go out and vote. And we have no participation in the decisions of government. We have no means to hold the government accountable for their responsibilities. We have no way of ensuring that the government is embedded in the focus of citizens, which is basically to ensure the evolution of the citizens in the direction of human dignity. We don't have any of that. And those are the things that make a difference between an electocracy and a democracy. What we have is a 4-year ritual of picking leaders. Look at Cameroon or look at Zimbabwe. They had elections every 4 years, but they had a dictatorship. Yeah. So having the ritual of going to vote is not the definition of a democracy.
All right, let's go back now. Let's bring in Aisha back into the conversation and talk about, I want to talk about protests this time, especially because there are those who have called for protests today. I did mention this earlier. Looking at our journey so far, going back in time from the Nadeco days, you know, the pushback for those who fought for demanding what is rightfully theirs. And, you know, now we see a number of young people out there trying to, but this administration seems to have been termed one that has been very critical of dissent. What's your analysis in terms of how the administration has fared when it comes to protests, given not restricting citizens' rights to protest and observing the rule of law?
I think for me, I would say, if there was democracy, you know, true democracy, and I love what your guests in the studio said. They said there's a difference between, you know, a one-night stand and, you know, a relationship. If we truly had democracy, this administration will not be here. Democracy is not just about just going in, voting, elections are rigged. And my stance on this administration, for one, it's no. As far as Aisha Yesufu, I'm concerned, this is an illegitimate administration that should never have been allowed to be sworn into office. And I refuse to even talk about whatever it is the administration is doing, because I refuse to legitimize an illegitimacy as far as I'm concerned. Having said that, is to say that in Nigeria, like has been rightly said, we don't have the democracy as we're supposed to have it, because we don't have rule of law, there is no justice, people are not allowed to own their voices, there is repression. We see all over the place where certain rules are applied to certain people and at the same time not, you know, to other people. Citizens are different based on the connection they have, the money they have, the powers, you know, that they have. And these are things that affect a nation. And these are things that lead to the things we see today, where there's breakdown in law and order, where we have a lot of non-state actors that have taken arms against, you know, the country. Because at the end of the day, there is no justice. Democracy is supposed to give a platform where people's voices are heard, where people are represented, where there is justice, and where people know whatever it is that is done for them, there's a place that we go to. But unfortunately, what we have right now, it's a lot of state capture. In state capture, we have institutional capture. Literally every arm of the government, you know, has been captured. We see the legislative has been captured, the judiciary, you know, has been captured. So it's a place where it's life is not short, nasty, and brutish, and it's everyone for himself. And at the end of the day, it's a destruction that is ongoing. And so Nigeria, it's almost like that ticking bomb that people think it's not going to explode, but they don't know that it has already exploded. And it's going off, you know, little by little by little, and everyone, it's a victim waiting to happen. And one of the things for me that I think we need to think about in this democracy, and I like the reference to United States of America, is that, look, democracy is not something that everybody knows how to do it. It's about putting in leaders who have integrity, who are going to obey the rule of law, and who are going to obey convention. Not necessarily everything cannot be written down, you know, in white and black for people to adhere to. So that means then that if we as a nation, we do well, because Nigerians have failed, we the followers have failed, the leaders have also failed. We have refused to do. Governance is of two sides. Let me just say quickly before I round up. Governance is of two sides. You have the demand side and supply side, like Dr. Obieze would always say. The followers are supposed to make demands. The people who are the leaders who are voted in or appointed are supposed to supply our governance. So we have all both failed. We haven't done the things that we are supposed to do. Because if you're talking about democracy, democracy just doesn't start at when we are 18 years old, you are adult, you're working. Democracy is supposed to start from when you are a child. And how many houses in Nigeria are democratic? So a lot of the first set of dictators that Nigerians got accustomed to are parents and adults around them, and teachers and religious rulers who refuse to allow them to have voices, to be able to make demands, to demand justice. The children who did attempt stubborn, and they were always punished. And so we have grown up into people who don't even know what democracy is. We're used to, and we are militarized for a very long time. So we're used to whenever they tell us to do something, we do it. We need to go back and work on a whole lot in this country, but most importantly, understand that, you know, every citizen, we are all equal. And but I will end this by saying democracy without education is a disaster. And if we don't work on getting good quality education, primary and secondary, for the public good of Nigeria, we are not going to get the democracy that we want.
All right.
So pretty much we still have a long road or a long way to go. But Zil, you did talk about transparency, also accountability, and then we narrowed that down as well in line with what the leadership looks like. 26 years, how do you think it's best for us to get accountability or transparency? I mean, we have the ICPC, we have the EFCC. Are they not in any way proving that accountability is indeed right for Nigerians in the way they operate?
Accountability in the context of a democracy or government or of a people, a nation in general, is a culture. It's not something that you bring out a law and ask people to comply with. It's a culture. So ask yourself, within the culture of the average Nigerian, are we self-accountable? If you run your own company, do you give accounts to yourself? Accountability is a culture. If it's not in our culture, it's not in our culture. You can do your best to enforce it, but we all know that culture eats everything for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So our leaders, before our leaders became leaders, they were first of all, like each and every one of us, like Aisha said, they were ordinary citizens within the realm. I mean, a friend of mine was chatting with me the other day, and she was petrified that in her WhatsApp group, the same issues she has with government, she has in her WhatsApp group. It's the same thing in our culture, and we keep missing that point. We have made a mistake a long time ago, and the analogy I would use is you intended to build a structure, and you did a foundation for 3 floors, right? And you built 3 floors, and you realized, I can go higher. And then you built 10 floors, and then you built 15 floors, and then you built 36 floors, right? And then every breeze that blows, every rain that falls, the building shakes, it crumbles, the windows fall out, and you keep patching it up. And somebody comes and tells you and says, look, you will spend a lot of resources and energy patching this thing up. You're going to ban people from playing loud music. You're going to ban people from slamming the doors. But if you don't revisit the foundation that was structured for just 3 floors, you're going to have a problem. And you call all the experts in the world and tell them, do whatever you like to fix this building, but please don't touch the foundation. And that's what, so telling someone and saying, okay, this building of 36 floors, let's assess it. I'm not assessing it. The foundation is wrong. If you're not going to change the foundation or reinforce it, then whatever you do to it is not going to last. And that's what we've been seeing in the country. It's not.
So what is this foundation and what is needed to be done?
The basis of the constitution we run does not fit our aspiration to evolve in the direction of human dignity.
So should there be a constitutional reform or something?
I think, what is a constitution in the first place? The agreement of how the entire country should operate in a manner to structure the resources for equitable distribution in a manner as well that law and order prevails. You can't build a constitution that is contrary to the inherent culture of the people. So I'll give an example, because you mentioned ICPC.
Yeah.
The ICPC Act says giving or receiving gifts is a criminal offense, and you will go to prison. But in every culture of Nigeria, giving gifts is applauded. So which is it? You tell me, as a Yoruba person or an Igbo person or a Hausa person, when I go and visit elders in my village,
Don't come before a king without
even your religion says don't go before a king empty-handed. But your law says if you come with something, you go to prison. So which is it? So we've built our nation on principles that are contrary to our culture. And then we have now imposed a style of governance, which is called a democracy, but exhibited as an electocracy. And then you want to appraise it in such a way that it functions for the people. Let's look at, for a very simple exercise, the reason the Nigerian police was instituted during the colonial era was to protect the colonials from the people, because the colonials were exploiting the people. That's the reason the police was created. Have we changed that? Because as of today, you have between 30 and 40% of your police assigned to VIPs. We still have our police protecting the elite, who we call the elite, from the ordinary citizens. If I'm in trouble, what is the speed of response of the police? If there's a rumor of a protest, what is the response of police? So you see that the structure we run is still very much protecting the elite or the VIPs, whatever I want to call them, against the people. And that is the opposite of what a democracy is. So you don't appraise this democracy on those principles, it doesn't work.
Wow. A tough one, indeed. Anyway, Olive, you want to take a question on Aisha?
Okay. I mean, I still wanted to ask Zil about the economic policies. But before we get into economic policies, I think that when you're talking about the growth or the enforcement of democracy, the judiciary has a key role to play in that journey. So let's get your assessment of where we are, Nigeria's judiciary, and where the lapses that you've observed, and what sort of hope you have for Nigeria's judiciary, which is the last hope for the common man.
Well, the judiciary is supposed to be the last hope of the common man, but unfortunately in Nigeria, the judiciary is a plaything of corrupt politicians and anyone who has, power and access. And we have seen over time the way the judiciary has been turned into a merchandise that can be purchased at any time, anywhere. And that's the reason why you see someone will leave maybe, let's say, my village in Agbede, and we go all the way to a village in Jigawa, Benukudu, a town there, and go and purchase judgment. We've seen where even when judiciary judgments are put down, they are not obeyed. They are not obeyed by institutions, and the judiciary is unable to do anything. You've seen situations whereby frivolous cases, frivolous issues are being put before the judiciary. So judiciary has been captured, and you see politicians actually bragging, they don't hide it openly that you go to court, they own the court, and they say this thing publicly. You see situations whereby even the highest judicial officer, which is the Chief Justice of Nigeria, are sitting at a place. You're seeing a president of the appeal court sitting, and someone is coming to tell them how he didn't follow the rule of law to acquire a property, and then they are using that property that wasn't acquired, that was illegally taken back, to build things for them, to build houses for them. And the judiciary, they're silent. You're seeing where politicians and judicial officers are celebrating, which are things that are not, supposed to be. And unfortunately, even the Transparency International, I think it was a perception index, corruption perception index, this thing that they did, the Nigerian judiciary was top in terms of the one that the people perceived to be most corrupt. These are issues that really, it's sad, because you can't get a great nation without the judiciary, working. But there's hope for the judiciary if the judiciary decides on its own to do the needful, because we have a lot of people who are incorruptible in the system. The ones who are doing the system wrong, they are quite few. But unfortunately, it's the vocal minority and the ones who are powerful. So the people who are doing the right thing, the judicial officers who are doing the right thing, are being punished. And when they are punished, we don't stand for them. And so they're on their own. And I'll give you an example. Even in the legislative, last year we had a situation where a senator, if I can mention him, I think it was Senator Ningi, who would come out to tell Nigerians that, look, the budget is being padded by such, huge sums of money. What ended up happening? He was suspended, he was punished, We as citizens, we didn't stand with him. And then this year, there is even more outrageous pardon. So it's really heartbreaking when you see people who are standing and doing the right thing. They're the ones who are constantly being punished. But like I said, there must be a judicial reform. We must, from the way judges are being appointed, from the way technology must be used to take out a lot of corruption. You can't be picking cases, I don't know how it's called in the judicial term, where you're either going to Supreme Court or Appeal Court. There must be a system where you log in, you take in something, not someone deciding when they are going to push your case forward or push your case backward. There are also a lot of reforms that needs to be done in the judiciary. I mean, justice delayed is justice denied. We have judges sitting down and still writing. Why don't we have stenographers? Why don't we have people? Why don't you have judges just sit and listen and make sure cases are done, quickly? Why are they taking so much time, and then cases are dragging on 40 years, some cases 50 years? Then justice is already lost. Even when the person is winning the case, nothing is coming out of it. But most importantly, I think the judiciary should wake up to its responsibility, because it's supposed to be the one that, like you said earlier, the last resort of the common man, that when everything, fails, so we should be able to go there and get some recourse. And where justice is not gotten, unfortunately, one of the things that happen is that, like I said earlier, people begin to take laws into their hands because they know they will not find justice there. And that's where we have, with the insecurity we have today, with a whole lot of things that are going wrong in Nigeria, because many people no longer believe they can get justice. And if you speak to the people who are attacking the state, you find they have a lot of injustice that have been done to them, and that these things have not been corrected.
Right. Thank you very much for, speaking to the challenges in Nigeria's judiciary. And I'm sure that this is something that we'll keep talking about, and hoping that we can see some of these reforms that have been suggested. The NBA conference is around the corner, and I'm sure that this will form some of the hallmarks of their conversation. But let's come back to Zeal now. And I want us to talk about the economy this time. April last year, we got the announcement that inflation had, dipped to 23.71%. They were like, oh, this is great, because the month before it was 24.23%. We hear about some of the seeming growth sometimes, and changes and improvements in the numbers. But the major concern and complaints that you hear from the majority of Nigerians is how some of these numbers are not reflecting in the lived reality of Nigerians. You go back quickly to policies like subsidy is gone, and then the unification of the exchange rate. And these policies, some would argue, the economists would argue, that maybe they were great, or maybe we should have phased it out. But the truth is, the average common Nigerian is still complaining of hunger. So where are we? How did we get here, Zeal? How did we get here, and how do we get out of where we are? Or maybe you think we're in a good place. I shouldn't assume that, we're getting out from where we are. Maybe you think we're in a great place.
Well, I think it was last year I tweeted something, and I said what I call the 10 by 10 by 10 coincidence. That in roughly 10 years, so if you pick, let's say 2012, in roughly 10 years, money supply has grown 10 times. In 2011, 2012, give or take a few years, money supply in the country was 10 trillion. Today, give or take a few billions here and there, it's 100 trillion. It's grown 10 times. Now, the price of a Toyota Corolla in 2012 was 5 million. Today, it's, guess what? 50 million, roughly 10 times. A bag of rice was 10,000. Now it is roughly 100,000, 10 times. The exchange rate was 160 to 1. Now it's 1,500 to 1, roughly 10 times. So in 10 years, everything has gone up 10 times. It is not a coincidence. It is what we did by ourselves to ourselves. So whether or not we get out of it, the question is, what are we doing to stop the bleeding? A lot has been done to stop the bleeding. But what Nigerians are complaining about regarding inflation, inflation is a measure in the, I don't use the word average, but that's the best word to use, average prices across various sectors, the change in those prices month on month or year on year. The issue we have, while inflation is a big issue, and that has been considerably controlled compared to where we were last year, but the main issue is that the price point today is too high for the average Nigerian to survive. That's the issue. The issue is not that, I mean, we were here last year, if you go to one supermarket and check the price of anything, and you say, it's too expensive. I'll go to a different one tomorrow. You go to the different one tomorrow, the price is higher. You go run back to the price change again. No, but the issue is, if you look over the last couple of months, say 6 months or so, prices have not been rising, at least from my perspective, as much as they were a year ago. But the point is, even if prices stay exactly where they are today, it's still too high. And that's the challenge the government is battling with regarding the poverty of the people. The prices are too high. Like I said, the 10 by 10 coincidence, almost everything went up 10 times over a 10-year period because we mismanaged the economy. The one thing that did not go up 10 times was the people's salaries and the people's wages. That did not go up. So until we can find a way to stabilize, like they say, if a car is going downhill, you need to first slow it down, stop it, before you can put it in reverse.
So, but they argue that right now what they've done is slowing down and stopping it. So we can then start to see an upward trajectory. Do you have confidence that maybe in another 2 years we'll start to see things move in an upward trajectory in Nigeria?
I think the fact that we have really slowed down the bleeding gives me hope that there's capacity to turn it around. Now, the policies to turn it around are different from the policies to stop the bleeding. So it will be interesting to see what policies we come up with to bring prices down. You know, that's the important thing. Stabilizing prices is very important. We have some relative success on that. But how do we turn it around to start bringing prices down so that the affordability of the common man is catered for? I think that's the real issue Nigerians are suffering. It's not that inflation is not really the common man's problem as much as the price point as we are today is already too high. So how does the government retweak its spending? How does the fiscal policy change things in such a way that the government can now afford to bring out policies, ensure the processes, the procedures of manufacturing bring down the cost of living for the Nigerians?
All right. I think I'd like to push my final question to you, Aisha. We cannot help but talk about one thing that you've also been interested in always talking about, which happens to be the aspect of governance, particularly facing the electoral body. In 26 years that we've had the independence, so far so good, when I say independence, away from military rule, what would you make of INEC? Well, I'm told that possibly the network has indeed... okay, all right, she's there.
I can hear you.
Oh, great, great. Let's talk about trust deficit in 26 years. What would you make of that? And going into 2027, where we'll see our independence continue to either thrive, grow, there's a body that is saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that, trust from the people to those whom they have elected in power is indeed kept at a standard. What do you make of INEC and going into 2027 while focusing on our own democracy?
As we are currently, the only thing independent about INEC is it's the letter I. That's the only independent that is there, and unfortunately, INEC has not, given the people a reason to trust them. Nigerians are very, kind people, and they're always ready to forgive. Nigerians are not too hard, and little things that you do, they appreciate it. But over and over again, their trust, they've been betrayed and they've been disillusioned because of the things that we see. As it is right now, even as we go into the election, there's nothing to trust, because you see a lot of people who are in INEC currently, whether the commissioners, that have been appointed and all of that, most of them are either card-carrying members of a particular party or supporters of, strong card-carrying members of a particular party, of a particular party. And even when Nigerians have cried out to say, this is wrong, because anyone that is partisan is not supposed to be in that kind of opposition, even if you're not a card-carrying member. The moment that you've been partisan in a way, you're not supposed to be in that position. But we've seen the way INEC has gone on. We've seen the way that INEC has conducted election and the present manner that it refuses to follow, judicial orders. When INEC is told to do something by the courts, it does whatever it is that it wants to do. And I think there's a big flaw that we have in the Electoral Act. It's where the burden of proof is not on INEC. The burden of proof should be on INEC in a way that they are the ones who are conducting the election. They're the ones who have collected huge sums of money, billions of money to conduct this election. And they need to come out and show Nigeria when they are told that the election that they conducted is not well conducted, then the court the law must state that they must prove to us that indeed the work that was given to them, they did it the way that it's supposed to be done. I've never seen in any case, I know people will say, oh, he who alleges must prove. No, that mustn't be the case when it comes to INEC, because they were given a job to do. You don't go to your employer, you've not done the right thing, and then your boss tells you to do something, you don't do it, and then you tell your boss to prove it that you didn't do it well. No, you are the one that have to prove that you've done it well. And one of the things also, just to quickly add, is that we must also get to a place, I'm just digress a little bit now and talk about the judiciary, that the situation where we have in Nigeria today, where millions will vote, and then some few people will sit down somewhere in the court, and they will upturn the votes of the people. That has to stop. We must have enacted in the law, in the Electoral Act, that the judiciary will not have the power to declare a winner. What they should have the power to do is for there to be a recount where there is a problem. Let them bring out all the ballot paper, let them recount it, or let them go for a fresh election. Situation whereby Nigerians have come out, they vote, they've sweated, they've worked hard, and they put in their mandate is truncated. It's a crime. And for me, anybody that rigs election, it should be treated as a terrorist. It's terrorism it's electoral terrorism against the people. It makes the people we fight hard to get, things to go out there to vote, put their lives on the line, and their votes are not counted at the end of the day. This is not the way things should be. And a lot of things that even INEC, the things that it says it's going to do, it does not even follow its own regulations, its own stipulation. And these are major problems for Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Aisha Yesufu, for joining us. Zila Karewe, fantastic conversation we've had this morning. We all look forward to a better Nigeria that will benefit all of us. Thank you for your time, gentleman and lady. And let's now move on from here to... having me. Thank you very much. We'll now move on from here to a place that commemorates what June 12 was actually about, the MKO guarding. We have our correspondent, Bernard Akede, who brings us live report from there as we mark Democracy Day. Let's get to see what the celebrations are looking like. Good morning, Bernard. Happy Democracy Day. What's happening over there?
Good morning, Olive. Happy Democracy Day to you. I was hoping I would beat you to it, but yeah, happy Democracy Day to you. I'm just like you did mention, I'm right in front of the late Chief MKO Abiola's residence on Toyin Street in Ikeja, not far from us, as a matter of fact. And of course, you can see behind me one of the banners, and we have guests arriving in ones and twos. We expect that there will be a number of people here eventually. We'll be able to speak to them. Right behind me is one of the banners hanging right there, commemorating June 12, the annulled elections that happened in June 12, or that occurred in June 12. And we do know now that June 12 is Democracy Day. It used to be May 29, but now it is June 12 for the obvious reasons. This is the residence where the late Chief MKO Abiola used to stay. This is a residence that's known to most people, and when he passed, eventually this became his final resting place. Not just for him, apparently it also is a final resting place for his late wife as well, Kudirat Abiola. We all remember that story too well. As a matter of fact, I'll try to move in so that you see what it looks like on the inside. There are very few guests who are there as of now, but we have reason to believe that the numbers will increase eventually. I'll give you a brief tour of the surrounding, if you like. I did mention that it's the final resting place. It has been made the final resting place of the late Chief MKO Abiola, and for some, it's almost like a memorial place, a place where people come to remember. We've even seen one guest who came in and was almost in tears. June 12 is more than 20 years ago, but there are people who still remember the occurrence here from several years ago and still feel emotional, when they get to this location. This is the entrance in, and then I'll show you what I was talking about. Now, we have a few guests who already are seated, and this is what the premises looks like. Just behind me, if you can see clearly, in a few meters behind me, are the two final resting places of the late Chief MKO Abiola and his wife, Kudirat Abiola. There's a flag, a Nigerian flag, already flying here at full mast. And then for those who can remember actually what the premises used to look like back then, it really hasn't changed much. It looks like there's been some renovation, but it's still the same as we remember. The entrance is the glass door right there, and it's looking like there may be some kind of briefing. There are chairs already arranged, but guests have not started coming in. We'll see if we can actually move in there as well. And so this is basically what we have here, Olive, concerning June 12th. We're hearing that in other parts of the state, there'll be other kinds of ceremony and celebrations going on. But definitely for today, this is what we're expecting. Some are saying that there may be some dignitaries here, possibly the governor. We're not sure just yet. Some party members as well. We're not sure just yet, but we do hope, we do hope that when the guests come, we will be able to catch them live. Again, I did mention the entrance is right here. You will see in a few seconds some of the guests who are already seated inside, preparing for the event that is going to take place. As you can see right now, there's a table prepared for dignitaries that will be seated, and then these are the guests that we have at the moment for now. Others eventually will come in, and then we'll be able to hear from those who will be speaking to us. We're not sure, again, as I mentioned, how many people will be here, which dignitaries will be seated here eventually, but we know that there will be dignitaries. We'll see if we can speak to a few people concerning what June 12th. Good morning, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to speak to us? We're live on camera. Okay. Good morning, sir. Can you speak? Good morning, ma'am. Yes. Good morning, ma'am. We are live on News Central TV. Okay. Olive, will you please permit me? We're trying to see if we can get the music down so that we'll continue with the interview. But it's still fine. It's okay. Please give us a few seconds. Okay, let's just go ahead with this. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Please, we would like to know your name.
I can't hear you.
We would like to know your name, please.
Okay, I'm Alaja Komedami. Mama June 12th.
We would like you to tell us, what does June 12th mean to you? What does it represent for you?
To me or to Nigeria?
To you first and then to Nigeria.
Okay. June 12th it was a great day this time of 1993. Everybody, all Nigerians, Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, to vote for the man of masses, to vote for the richest man in Africa, to vote for the best giver in the whole world. That is late Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola. This man was a very great man, so there's no way we can never forget June 12th. But what I know is that June 12th is a good foundation, a strong foundation of democracy in Nigeria.
Okay, and now for all Nigerians, like you were saying, what does June 12th represent for all of Nigerians?
To all Nigerians, I think June 12th is a very, very good thing for Nigeria, because worse democracy is better than military regime. Military regime, all their things are false. But this democracy time now, you can, even if you like to talk to the president, you cannot say anything. Talk to me myself, I will not say anything. You are free, freedom of speech, then freedom of everything. So in Nigeria, we have just started the democracy. I know very soon we will get to the successful land.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So, Olive, you heard from one of the guests who's in attendance here. We're expecting that there will be more guests as well. We certainly do hope that we'll get to hear from others who come, and we will be bringing you live broadcasts from here and other parts of the state concerning the June 12th celebrations today, being Democracy Day.
All right. Thank you so much, Bernard Akede. We can rightly say that there's a lot of celebration in motion. But we'll get back to you, and we're sure that you will join our subsequent coverage of June 12th. Democracy special.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we remember that June 12th is a day that commemorates resistance. It's a day that reminds us of the man that is Moshood Kashimawo Abiola. So it's a great day. We look forward to seeing more celebrations. Today was made officially Nigeria's Democracy Day in 2018 by President Muhammadu Buhari. We'll be right back after this break to delve into more conversations. Stay with us. As we celebrate Nigeria's democratic journey, some say that there have been wins, but many have argued that our democracy is tainted with flaws of corruption, political and electoral illiteracy. Now, looking at the current political landscape of Nigeria with concerns over the possibility of a one-party state, we're now confronted with serious questions such as, is democracy truly serving the Nigerian people? Is our political structure delivering justice, accountability, and real representation?
Well, this special Democracy Day conversation is not just about looking back, it's about taking stock of where we are. From the weakened opposition parties that we see now to rising public distrust in electoral processes and a growing sense of alienation among citizens, the Nigerian democracy faces urgent challenges. Well, joining us to take time to unpack these issues are indeed prominent PDP member in Lagos State. We do have Mr. Funso Doherty, who's joining us. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
And of course, we do have seasoned journalist and of course, public affairs analyst, one who definitely played a major role in, we could say, the former governor of Lagos State, talking about Mr. Mebawondu, and you played that role of the chief press secretary. And not just that,
absolutely,
you played many other roles as well. We do have of course, he's a man you know so well, Mr. Habib Aruna, who joins us here.
Do you think that this might be some sort of...
This is very interesting because
prophetic meeting.
We were looking to have both of you...
Happy Democracy Day.
Thank you, thank you. We're looking to have the both of you on the same table, and it's just happened on today's edition.
Yeah,
I'm going to start off first because my focus, I don't know about Oli, but my focus would really be about the subnationals. Most times we always talk about the federal government. We also talk about the presidency, how policies are not trickling down from the top. But in 26 years, can we beat our chests to say that the subnationals have done fantastically well in ensuring that the dividends of democracy is meted out to its citizens? I'm going to start with you first, Mr. Funso Doherty.
Okay, thank you. So it's an interesting question. Can we say they've done fantastically well? I think if you ask 10 people, you'll get, 10 same answers that no, we don't think they've done fantastically well. And, primarily, if you look at, the whole notion of democracy, which this present dispensation started in '99, I think there are a few positive things we can point to, but I think on the whole, and on the balance of things, I would say that, we have a lot to be disappointed about. First is that, well, we must acknowledge that, well, we are still one country, so we must give thanks for that. We are still actually practicing the democracy, i.e. we have not gone back to military. So again, we must be thankful for that.
Even though some sectors of society will not be happy about that.
Yeah, well,
those who have been clamoring for something different.
Return, yes,
exactly.
Perhaps. But, we know what we went through in the last dispensation of military. So the fact that we're a democracy today, helps. There are also one or two pockets we can point to, things like the telecom industry and so on and so forth, where we can say, we've seen some progress. But on the whole, when you think about what is the primary purpose of governance, and democracy is a form of governance, right? So the primary purpose of governance is welfare and security of the people. So if you look at it today on all of those fronts, on security, can we say we're in a good place? I don't think so. On welfare, which touches a lot of people, if it's the rate of poverty, if it is the quality of education, just in the past few weeks, we're talking about the kind of WAEC results that we saw where more people failed than passed from the Lagos State public schools. You talk about JAMB. Think about the healthcare that people experience. Think about our health indices, which, given our population, when you look at global health indices, they are actually skewed downwards because of Nigeria's figures, right? Because we have challenging health indices, whether it's maternal mortality, childhood mortality, and all of these things that bear on the quality of life of the people. So, at the end of the day, when you think about the welfare of the people, the lives of the people, the quality of the people, for all the time that we've spent, for all the resources that have been deployed, for all the shenanigans and machinations in the political space, we really have to say that the outcome in terms of real governance and in terms of the lives of the people leaves a whole lot to be desired.
Right. All right, thank you for laying the groundwork, speaking about the different sectors. In fact, we have spoken about health earlier, and looking at the fact that what we have is 5% allocation in the budget, whereas there was an agreement in Abuja for 15%, but we're still there at 5%. The number of private health centers, the health centers that are very poorly managed, it's not really a great sight. Yeah. But I want Mr. Aruna to also share his thought with us. There are those who argue that maybe the democracy as it ought to be, should start with a redefining of what our structure currently is. For example, 36 states constantly going to the center, aligning themselves with the center every month to be able to survive, and that if we're going to be able to run some sort of a true democracy, we might need to revisit that structure where every state is dependent on the center. Do you agree with that?
I will depart sharply from what Mr. Doherty said. I think there's a need to celebrate the father, the military, and the barracks. They need to celebrate because there is some form of freedom of expression, of association. The media is still free. You know, I always believe one thing, that democracy is a journey, it's not a destination. And the problem started from Mr. Basanjo. I was in the media. I voted for Abiola on June 12th. I was in Kano. I saw what happened. The Hausas, everybody voted for Abiola. They keep behind this picture. Later, me and one guy that was interested in what was going on, we went around the town to where Tofa voted. Abiola won. You know, then what now happened thereafter? When the military were leaving, the deputy to Abdul Salami, Admiral Habib, invited some journalists to the VI, officers' mess. One of my boss, MD, was there. Habib told them in confidence, gentlemen, the military is interested in this transition. We want to make Obasanjo our own Mandela. In other words, they were interested in the process. Election is not just one day thing, it's a process. So implicitly, OBJ was supported and they won the election. And there was this cry by both the civil society and concerned Nigerians. And Obasanjo should institutionalize, our institution should be strong. Make our institution strong. That was the beginning of the problem. Obasanjo has a singular opportunity for the former head of state, respected, very influential, and very audacious. That was the beginning of our problem. The first US president, George Washington, because of his nature and contribution to the way the system emerged, there was no anywhere in the US Constitution that term limit was indicated because of George Washington. But the man served for 2 terms. And when he was going, his address to the American people is a classic. We must set a foundation. There's no foundation by Obasanjo. What we are seeing now, the declaration of emergency in River State, was done in Plateau and Ekiti by Obasanjo. So I'm saying that there should be a foundation. Obasanjo was a PDP candidate. And unfortunately, Doherty is in PDP now. So they should share part of the blame of where we are. We're talking about the subnationals, the state government and local government. There's no way you can look at Abuja. During the Second and Third Republic, the governors were powerful. At the same time, subservient to the state assemblies. Accountable to the state assembly. It's on states. Different party controls the executive and legislature. But in this republic, the same party controls it. The governors have the assemblies in their pocket. There's no accountability, no transparency. And it's affecting governance. So I am disturbed, but I think that's some people, for example, in this republic, like this man sitting down, a discovery. People that have integrity, people that are honest, people that can serve. But the system has not allowed them to be there.
Talking about the system now, 26 years and we're still counting. I mean, Mr. Doherty, do you think these 26 years has done good to the reforms, rather, that we've had has been better off for Nigeria's democracy? We just had a guest who joined us, Zeal. He had talked about the Constitution possibly needing a reform because it doesn't fit what we are currently, faced with. So do you think going forward, this is 26, before we know we're going to be 27 and it's still counting, though many leaders have said that we're still very young, but would justice be met with the current constitution that Nigeria abides by or to?
Okay, so before I touch on your question, my brother started off by saying he would differ sharply with me. But I didn't actually hear where he differs sharply with me. Because he said the military should be the barracks.
I wanted to celebrate.
No.
And I said, no, it's a journey, it's not a destination. I should not conclude yet that it's not working.
I started off by saying there are a couple of things we can celebrate. That the military, we are in democracy, we are still one country. That's where I started. But anyway, it's fine. So,
reforms. Looking
reforms and the Constitution.
Look, does it work for Nigeria's democracy?
Look, at the end of the day, a lot of people have a lot of issues with the Constitution. And part of the issues is that, it was developed sort of under the military. There's a unitary philosophy that permeates through what should be a federalist kind of document. And therefore, we have a lot of inconsistencies that show up in practical governance. I am one of the key proponents of true federalism and the fact that, whatever we define the federating units as, they should in fact be federating units, and that we should have true separation of powers between the federal and the federating units, and that those should be established and maintained. And the states should not be servants of the center. There are cases when the state will differ from the center, and they should have to be able to represent their people at the center, in fact, and advocate on the part of their people. Now, having said that, I think that ultimately, and the Constitution is a living document. It's not a document that you draft once and forever in place. There are amendments, there are processes, and so on. And so even our Constitution is undergoing change as we speak. Now, we can argue as to whether that pace of change is quick enough, whether the process is, cumbersome, and so on. But the truth of the matter is that, we have a Constitution today. Given the Constitution that we have, granted it's not perfect, are we governing the best way we can with the Constitution that we have? That's another question you can ask, right? So even within the present Constitution, are people doing what they have the freedom to do in terms of governing well for the interests of the people? And I think there's still a problem there. And so I think that we can talk about the Constitution, the issues there are valid, and we must talk about them, and we must advance the cause of constitutional reform, but we must not allow it to distract us from the fact that, governance needs to improve, both at the federal and at the subnational level. And we can then see, or where we will see the outcome of that governance is in the lives of the people. It doesn't matter how long we talk. It doesn't matter the list of things that we lay out, that we've done or not done. At the end of the day, everything resolves in the lives of the people. And that is the yardstick by which we have to measure it.
All right, let's talk about politics now. Political parties. In 1999, 26 years ago, your party was the vehicle by which President Olusegun Obasanjo came into power.
Mm-hmm.
Today, 26 years later, PDP is meant to be a viable opposition, but it's been fraught with a lot of challenges. In recent times, we've seen certain key members moving to the All Progressives Congress, which has then birthed the argument about one-party state. Some speaking for it, some speaking against it, others saying there's no problem with it. The APC welcomes all these opposition members. In fact, the FCT minister has recently been told that when he's ready to join the Progressives, he's welcome to the All Progressives Congress. Meanwhile, there are those within your party who have just left and have said that they are coming to destroy the structure of the party in Lagos State like Jando. So what do you make of the APC as a viable opposition? And do you worry about
PDP?
Sorry, the PDP, thanks for that. What do you make of the PDP as a viable opposition? And do you share the same sentiment with those who worry about Nigeria sliding into a one-party state?
I think you were prescient in that slip or that mistake you made. APC will be an opposition party soon. But having said that, look, you know, we have to distinguish between the noise and the reality, and know where one stops and the other begins, right? So yes, it is true that people are defecting. They are defecting not just from PDP, they are defecting from Labour Party and moving to APC. And we see that. It's not something that we have never seen before, mid-cycle, right? Because there will be those people that will go because they believe that, you know, they are out of power and, you know, goodies flow on the side in which, you know, power lies. You know, so you have some of that. And then some will go by way of natural disagreements and so on. We'll have that, right? And in our climb, it is more likely to see more people leaving the opposition to the ruling party than to see people leaving the ruling party to the opposition. Right? So that's number one. Number two is that there's no party that doesn't have internal wranglings, right? So even the ruling party, I think it is evident that, you know, they also have issues internally that they are grappling with. And we see that a lot in Lagos State and in some of the developments that we've seen, even just this year, from the beginning of the year, State House of Assembly, to the most recent issues, you know, surrounding, you know, the perceived distance that has emerged between the governor and the president, supposedly. So, you know, we see these things from time to time. You are more likely to see it in full bloom more in the opposition than in the ruling party, because the ruling party is in power, right? And so they have the ability to, you know, try and keep their house in order or to paper things over. At the end of the day, let us remember that we are, again, this is a journey. So the dust will settle. We will have some of these movements. But when the movements settle, at the end of the day, are we going to have a one-party state? I don't think we will ever have a one-party state. We would never have a one-party state. The question is, how many opposition parties will you have? What is the size of the opposition parties? Will they be united? And so on and so forth. We will never have a one-party state, despite the best efforts of those who might want to make it a one-party state. It's not possible, right? So at the end of the day, you know, you will always have a situation going to an election where you will have the incumbent and you will have alternatives to the incumbent. And the people will be faced with a choice. Do they want the incumbent, or do they want one of the alternatives to the choice, one of the alternative choices? Now, if the alternatives are united and it's one alternative, it makes it easier for the people to make that choice. But people will always be presented with that choice. So it is maybe tempting to get caught up in the headlines that we see today. But I can tell you for a fact that by the time the next election rolls around, APC will be here, PDP will be here, and there may be other significant parties as well. And we will go to the polls on February or March in 2027. We will go to the polls, and the people will be faced with a choice, and they will make a choice. So we can speculate all we like today about, is it going to one-party state? Is the opposition dead? It's all talk. I can tell you for a fact that PDP is here, PDP stands strong, and I'm sure it will not only be PDP that will be in opposition, and we will go to the polls in 2027, and the people will be given a choice.
All right. Mr. Aruna, I want us to look at, still under the brink of democracy, 26 years. Two things, ideology.
Well, I'm not going to touch on what you said.
All right, go ahead.
It's important, you know, because democracy will only flourish if you have a multi-party system in the continent of Nigeria, with its peculiarities, nature, and character. I don't think Nigeria will have a one-party state. I'm a Kakari member of APC, but I'm a journalist. I'm very objective. And you guys know that.
Absolutely.
When I speak on national issues. That's why I appreciate the likes of Mr. Doherty the last time he came out to contest. You know, he shook up and animated the process. People know that, yes, there's hope in the country. But his party is in a mess. His party is in disarray. His party is not united. That was agreed to by even member of the party, Lamido, and the rest. You know, we have a man that is in his party at the same time on the employment of Mr. President. He even said yesterday that no matter the coalition and their efforts, they will lose in the next election. So let's face that reality. Don't generalize these things. The reality on ground presupposes that PDP is in a big mess. When we talk of Lagos State, no structure. So how are they going to do it? We have a contest under an umbrella, not a platform. You know, it be in our best interest for us to, for a party structure, an opposition coalition to challenge President Tinubu. You know, but the way it's going,
I do not believe that.
No. PDP is even saying that they're not interested in the coalition talks. You know, how are they going to do it? A party that failed to punish a stubborn member, a recalcitrant member, you need to ask yourself, you can't be in PDP, destroying the party, and working to promote the interest of Mr. President. So people like him should be told, frankly, what are you doing about it? You are not organized, you don't have a structure. The members are not even, they don't even know what they're doing.
But the chieftain was there yesterday and he disagreed with that.
No, let me finish. I've been telling to my...
Go ahead.
I don't have my opinion, not to facts. The facts are there. You know, I was thinking that, because I don't think it will be in our interest to affect governance and democracy if we allow one party state. And that's why I'm very much disposed to the idea of parties coming together in a third world democracy. You cannot fight a ruling party by going it alone. Not like the PDP that is rudderless. So there should be a platform of people coming together with an umbrella and being front to themselves. I think we should lead the way for people like Obi, people like Doherty, that are credible. I'm on a very serious note. That is the only way that Nigeria will show, yes, these guys are credible. We can support them, we can believe in them, and vote for them.
All right, let's have Mr. Doherty respond to that.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm glad my brother prefaced his comments by saying he's a card-carrying member of APC. So, as Yoruba people say, Kini Baso, right? This is the narrative.
I will say I'm a journalist.
Hold on. You spoke, now let me speak. So this is the narrative that is being put out there. And what else do we expect? Because what people have to ask themselves is, when they say PDP is in disarray, you hear people trying to say that every day. Most often, people in the ruling party and people affiliated with the ruling party. The question you ask yourself is that, why PDP? Why do people feel that PDP has to be weakened? Why must this narrative about PDP being in tatters be advanced? Why? Why?
It is in the interest of the opposition.
Because they know that their biggest threat is the PDP. They talk about, yes, it should be multi-party, yes, we should have coalition. The coalition may happen, it may not happen. But the PDP is there. And they know that the PDP is their biggest threat. And so we are 2 years to election. All this is stories. I'm just saying, let's wait. In 2 years' time, we'll be at the election. All these things that we are saying is speculation. PDP is weak. It cannot come out in the election. Just wait.
All right.
When 2027 comes, we shall see.
Okay.
I think in final thoughts, because we have to get to the next segment. Mr. Doherty, in terms of politics and political advancement of Nigeria's democracy, what are some of the changes you're hoping to see, and how can we encourage more people to be involved in our democratic process?
Well, I mean, there are a number of changes that are required. There are changes to electoral reform. We need perhaps changes to the Electoral Act to strengthen the electoral process. That is the process of voting, the process of collating votes, and all of that, to ensure that that process has greater integrity. As we do that, people will be more inclined to participate in the elections, because part of the problem that we have is a problem of low participation. In Lagos State, in the last elections, we had also about 15% of registered voters voting, not of the population, no, of registered voters. 7 million voters, we had about 1 million votes, right? So those numbers are abysmal, and they had been coming down, by the way, so that's the lowest, right? So, and it's because of a disenchantment and a disillusionment with the electoral processes, right? So we have a lot of work to do as the political class, and people have to believe that, you know, they have alternatives that they want to fight for on the day of the election, that they want to go out and support, and that they want to defend whose interests they want to defend, because they believe that those are the people who should govern them. And I think that a lot of us are working to meet those aspirations of the people. And I think it is a work in process, as we say. But we have a lot of work to do, I think, as politicians. But I also say that the people also themselves have to want it. The people have to want it.
Mr. Aruna, let's piggyback to one of my questions I wanted to ask earlier. In line with democracy, 26 years, do you think that a sense of political parties having ideologies has also been the bane of what we have today in our democratic setting? Because it seems like ideologies are no longer, in quotes, what is driving political parties. It's just a case of what people call wanting power, instead of having ideologies that would move both the system, the benefits of democracy, especially to the people.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. If you look at the politics of the First Republic, Second Republic, a semblance of ideology, can easily differentiate between the policy guiding the operations of the action group, First Republic, Unity Party, Second Republic, and the MPC and MPN, Second Republic. But this time around, you cannot pinpoint to anything guiding them. You know, so I agree with you that in most cases our politicians are opportunistic. You know, they're not pragmatic. And in this republic, the Fourth Republic, the first president, Obasanjo, did not particularly lay good foundation for people to have that conviction that I believe in welfareism, I believe in free education, I believe in free ed. Those things were not there.
But many will argue with you that what Obasanjo started, former President Obasanjo, what he started can also be traced down the line to what we also saw in President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, where institutions were built under their watch and then was continued, especially under Buhari when he came into power.
Ask any man today on the street, what does PDP stand for? What does APC stand for? They don't know.
Or about Labour Party? What do they stand for? NMP?
I don't know. They're also in disarray. You know, but it's also rudderless. You know, many factions, Abure, Nenadi Usman, and the rest. You know, so I think the politicians have a role to play. As I said, you know, he's a politician. They have a big role to play in making sure that things are done. But my position has always been, if there is no free and fair elections, you cannot have vibrant democracy or good governance. Nigeria should insist on free and fair, transparent elections. The process itself must be transparent and credible. People will be interested. So they will know that these political actors, 3-4 years' time, they will come back to us to seek a new mandate. If that is not done, bros, we are deceiving ourselves.
Hopefully without
that must be free and fair elections in Nigeria.
Wrap and the T-shirt.
When we talk about, all right, you wanted to add something?
Well, I just want to add, I don't want to come across as a defender of Obasanjo, but I think that, you know, we must give credit, some credit where credit is due. I think that between 1999 and 2007, we made a lot of progress as a nation. We made a lot of progress as a nation. We got debt forgiveness.
Yes.
We accumulated reserves, even though oil prices were not as high as they became subsequently. The whole telecoms revolution came out at that time. You know, in 99, it would cost you about $2,000 to get a mobile phone. Well, you remember that time, not mobile phone. 160,000 naira. It was $2,000 equivalent. By 2007, when Obasanjo was going, you could get, by 2,000 naira, you get a SIM, right? So and then you had, unlike now, when we have this Japa syndrome, we had a reverse Japa syndrome by the mid-2000s. People were coming out of the best schools in America and the UK, and were coming back because they believed that this was the place to be. Right? So now, he's not a saint. There are many things we can point to that perhaps he didn't do well, but I think there's an element of credit that we must give to him. And many would argue, by the way, that actually our governance has been downhill since that era.
All right, Mr. Doherty, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Aruna, for joining us. There's much to be expected and hoped for when we look at Nigeria's journey, where we're coming from. There have been gains. There have also been struggles. We're hoping that we can consolidate on the gains and learn from the mistakes to ensure that in another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we're telling a different story from today. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll now connect with our correspondent, Niyi Omoni, who is at Ekpetedo. He's at the site of the announcement of MKO Abiola's victory. Good morning, Niyi. What is the situation like there? It's great to see you take us back to a time in history, 26 years ago, when the announcement was made.
Yeah, good morning, Ollie. Good morning, Joe. So we're here at Dumari Street, Ekpetedo Mall, around the area, Lagos Island, Lagos. Just behind me, I've been here several times actually, and they just keep bringing the back then. No, I'm not as old as back then when he was arrested, but of course, I want to believe that this holds so much symbol. This place is quite similar to
Niyi, if you can hear me, Niyi, we're having a bit of challenge with your audio. Hopefully, we can get that fixed, but that's a prominent and very strong site where you stand. It brings about a lot of memories. Let's see, hopefully, if we can get Niyi, but if we can't get Niyi, we'll try as much as possible to see if we can reconnect with him once again. Hopefully, the microphones would allow us to speak with him. But we'll call for a quick break. And when we do return, we would take a look at our next conversation. Do stay with us.
Nigeria is a nation with diverse tongues and tribes. Nigeria, of course, has diverse tongues and tribes, and it's a gift that is supposed to unite the nation. However, one of the deepest fault lines still challenging our unity and progress is the persistent tension along ethnic and religious lines. From political appointments to community clashes, the question of identity remains central to how power is shared and how citizens experience governance.
Well, we'll now discuss a vital perspective of our democracy, the aspect of faith as well as moral leadership. Take note, faith in line with moral leadership. Anyway, we have joining us today Reverend Dr. Sam Oye, is the lead pastor of the Transforming Church, to help unpack how Nigeria's democracy has dealt with issues of ethnicity and religion, and most importantly, what role spiritual and civic leaders play in healing these divisions. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for taking time out to speak with us.
Should be with you, and a happy Democracy Day to all of us Nigerians. And looking back at where we've come from and where we are, we have so much to be, grateful for as a nation. Because in my lifetime, I've experienced both worlds. I've experienced what it means like to be under the military regime, and I also am alive to witness what we call democracy today, however we would like to define that. I'm sure they take it down. So one of the things that I want to quickly say is that, yes, we've made some progress as a nation. It is also important to know that we have miles to cover ahead of us. At this point in time, I want to say that the faith-based organizations, or what you call the religious organizations, have played a very significant role in stabilizing our democracy, by giving people hope in the midst of despair. Always trying to make people believe that there's always going to be a better Nigeria, there's always going to be a better time. So I think to a great extent, exercising our leadership role within the faith-based organizations, I think we've done a great job on both sides of the divides, whether we're Muslims or Christians. I think being able to use our influence to calm the nerves of people and give them a sense of hope for the future even in the midst of what we consider to be some of the worst challenges, I think to that extent, leadership has been exercised to the extent to which peace has to some extent reigned in most of our cities in Nigeria and most of our states. In terms of our relationship, the faith-based organizations and those in the political class, whilst it is not advisable, so to say, that the clergies are seen going around corridors of powers looking for, politicians and the rest of that, it is important to know that most of these politicians have some form of identification with faith-based organizations, whether they are Muslims, Christians, they go to church. And to that extent, I believe that clergies have a very significant role in utilizing the pulpit to teach values, morals, and to teach principles for nation building. So absolutely, we have a lot to play in terms of the developmental processes that our country is involved in right now.
There's also fear that the pulpit has now been used for political campaigns as well. We've seen certain politicians use the pulpit in not just passing messages, but also using it as a way of dowsing or stirring what they call divisions, even amongst political parties. What's your take on this? Do you think that it should be looked at differently, or it should be done differently, where there's a clear separation from what is religious and what is politics? Or do you think that they should continue to merge? Because these are things that everyone continues to see. And we're 26 years in democracy. Would there be any differences, if at all?
The first thing I like to say is that whilst I may not be seated, I do not want to sit here and put blames on anybody or attack anybody. I want to make it abundantly clear that the church is not designed, the church by design is not, instituted to affirm any political party. The church is the assembly of people from different political parties. Therefore, it is not wisdom on the side of any lead pastor of a church to stand on the pulpit and affirm a political party. I think it is a great disservice to members of that church who belong to other political class, because someday in the future, it might be their turn to lead the nation. And the leader of a church should be careful not to put your weight behind a political aspirant, a party aspirant, not to put your weight behind him when he is aspiring to lead. Because in the time of adversity, character is concealed. When people have access to power, character is unveiled. So it is dangerous to think as a leader of an assembly of a church, it is dangerous to bring someone because of the political rhetorics that are usually being propagated during campaigns. It is usually very dangerous. History has taught us that it has always come back to bite political leaders, to bite religious leaders, and to some extent, it has even weakened the influence of certain spiritual leaders because of their over-involvement and unnecessary endorsement of a political candidate. So here's what I'm saying. Our job as leaders, as pastors, is to make sure we give everybody, if you want political leaders to come and talk about what they want to do for the country, you give everybody the equal opportunity to come and share in church and say, look, let the PDP come and talk about what they want to do. Let APC talk about what they want to do. Let whatever other party come and talk about what they want to do. It's dangerous for us as leaders to single-handedly pick up one person and silence the others and say, this is the person. Now, what you don't know is what that person will become after the person becomes a leader. And by that time, how do you defend such misbehaviors when you were so loud in publicizing the person? Our job as a leader, as spiritual leaders, is to make sure we teach people principles for governance from biblical standpoint. Number two, to hold people accountable when they are in leadership. And the only reason why we can hold them accountable, The only reason why we'll be able to hold them accountable is because we are not compromised. Once you're compromised, you lose your credibility. You lose the capacity to be able to tell the people the truth.
Thoughtful and detailed answer. Just to mention to our audience that Peter Obi will be giving a speech shortly and will be connecting live to bring you updates from Abuja. But coming back to you, sir, you've spoken so well about the role of religious leaders in terms of holding government leaders to account, demanding accountability. We've seen situations where religion and politics have started to merge. We have in Benue State, for example, where the governor of Benue State is a Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia. The Middle Belt, interestingly, has suffered a lot when it comes to insecurity. And a number of these conversations, we hear people there say that in some measure, these insecurities dated back to many years, and they'll talk about being divided along tribal lines, being divided along religious lines. How can religious leaders come together to ensure that we find a solution, lasting peace in the Middle Belt in Nigeria?
I think one of the major things we must focus on as religious leaders is to remember that we are first Nigerians before we belong to to religious groups. We were first born as Nigerians before we evolved to become whether Christian, Muslim, or the rest of that. So to that extent, I think it is very, very critical that we who are in the religious space must learn to let Nigerians know that we are Nigerians first. And we must also learn to fall back to what our various religious or institutions teach, and that is love. I think from what I've seen with Hindu, Buddhism, and I've seen that with Islam, and I think central to the tenets of the Christian faith is the teaching on love. And one of the things that I love about the Christian faith is that the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's what the Bible teaches. So as pastors, we need to start teaching that. And I'm very sure that our fellow colleagues, our imam brethren, they will also be teaching about, because I think one of the things that I learned also about Islam is that Islam is a religion of peace. So if Islam is a religion of peace and Christianity focuses heavily on peace, which is nestled in mutual respect for one another, I think if we all go back to the core of our religion, which is to emphasize peace, to emphasize love, I think we will have a nation where peace indeed truly reigns and where everybody is everybody's brother's keeper. I grew up in the north, for your information. I grew up in the north where my best friends were Ibrahim, Inusa, and Mohammed.
And we look forward to... Yeah, we certainly, I'm glad that you share that, because that's the kind of Nigeria we hope for, where we're not divided along religious or ethnic lines. We see ourselves first as Nigerians before anything else. Reverend Dr. Sam Oye, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you this morning on Breakfast Central. Thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have to end the conversation, but we hope that we can call you again and you oblige us with your presence. Thank you so much for joining us.
Such an honor.
All right, this is where we wrap the show now. We will be connecting with Abuja as Peter Obi has started to give his address. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Olive MOD.
And I'm Joe Hansen. Thanking you for joining us. Don't forget the coverage continues, but let's take you to Abuja at the moment.